I am the least favored empress, childless and unloved, with no influential family background. I was merely granted the title of crown princess for taking a sword strike for the crown prince years ago. The crown prince never liked me, and after ascending the throne, he repeatedly sought to depose me. Afraid of public condemnation and written censure, he could only vent his resentment by tormenting my family. Years of bitter enmity, a sea of blood and hatred, reborn in this life, when assassins came. I decisively made my escape. Hey wait, why is this assassin coming at me? No way, why is the crown prince charging at me too? Hello, everyone, welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. The crown prince took a sword strike for me. Now the blood is gushing out. I hesitated, wondering whether to take advantage of the chaos and throw him into the pond. After all, opportunities to kill him without anyone noticing were rare. I only hesitated for a brief moment. The imperial guards had already surrounded us, shouting, "Protect His Highness the Crown Prince." They carried the crown prince away, his fingers clutching desperately at my sleeve. The commander of the imperial guards glanced at me, then at the deathly pale prince. With a wave of his hand, "Take them both." They brought the crown prince to the rear hall for treatment. I knelt in the outer hall, craning my neck to peer inside. Basins of bloody water were carried out one after another, while elderly imperial physicians ran about with their hair in disarray. The crown prince's life hangs by a thread. There's no time left for deliberation. But what if, I silently prayed, heaven above, please let him be that 1 in 10,000. A loud shout came from inside, and the crowd exclaimed, "It's done, it's done. The bleeding has stopped." I was disappointed. The heavens must be hard of hearing. At that very moment, a figure in bright yellow dragon robes appeared before my eyes. I looked up to see the emperor's face dark with anger. "Were you just praying for the crown prince?" I nodded. "Yes, but only that he wouldn't recover, that he'd die quickly." The emperor sighed and walked straight into the inner chamber. No one permitted me to rise. I knelt outside the hall, watching dark clouds obscure the moon, lost in silent reverie. Xiao Lin and I had been married for 10 years. Yes, the very one lying inside there. In my past life, it was the same. During the Chongyang banquet, the crown prince was ambushed. I happened to be by his side at that moment, having never witnessed such a scene before. Like a headless fly, I ran around in panic and ended up taking a sword strike meant for the crown prince. I was confined to bed for over 2 months to recover. My father petitioned daily for permission to enter the palace. When I recovered enough to leave my bed, news arrived from the palace. I was to be named crown princess, with the grand wedding to follow soon. The entire family was overjoyed, fantasizing about how one's rise to power benefits even their pets and poultry. Following my parents' wishes, I thought to myself, marriage is marriage, no matter the groom. Moreover, I once saved the crown prince's life. He is sure to treat me well. But I didn't know that sometimes, a great favor can become a great enmity. Crown Prince Xiao Lin had someone he loved in his heart. The third miss of the Prime Minister's household, Kui Yi. Kui Yi was both talented and beautiful, with a proud and lofty heart that would never accept being a concubine. Thus, the Crown Prince grew to hate me, resenting me for stealing the position of his first wife. Upon learning the truth, I voluntarily offered to step down. The old emperor gave me a stern reprimand. "Nonsense. A marriage decreed by the Son of Heaven, how can it be treated as child's play? Do you not hold us in your eyes?" The Crown Prince received a beating, while Kui Yi was bestowed in marriage to the son of the Prince of Chengyang. The Crown Prince hated me even more. After enduring until the old emperor finally passed away, the Crown Prince ascended the throne. He wanted to depose me, but was opposed by his ministers. The censors knelt day after day, begging him to revoke the decree. He suppressed his anger again and again, with no outlet for his rage, so he could only vent it on me. He demoted my father and brothers, and even forbade me from seeing my mother and sisters. I fell ill amidst days of silent resentment. I died at just 27 years old. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned 10 years into the past. It was the double ninth festival banquet once more. Without time to think, the assassin thrust his sword toward me. The Crown Prince also lunged forward, but I suspect he might have been trying to protect Kui Yi, after all. Kui Yi was right beside me at that moment. He wanted to play the hero and save the beauty, but the assassin's sword was too swift. Before he could even twirl Kui Yi in midair, the blade had already pierced him. He fell into my arms, blood splattering across my face. To outsiders, it looked as though the Crown Prince had taken a sword strike for me. I'm now worried about losing my life. After a while, the emperor strolled out and stopped in front of me again. The eunuch, quick to observe, introduced Your Majesty, this is Li Xiyin, daughter of Li Khan, the Vice Minister of Works. It was to save her that His Highness the Crown Prince was injured. How should she be dealt with? The Emperor remained silent for a moment before saying, "Let it be, it's not her fault." I secretly rejoiced and hurriedly expressed my gratitude. Your Highness the Crown Prince's life-saving grace is unforgettable. In this lifetime, I am willing to serve you like an ox or horse, and in the next life, I shall repay you by knotting grass and holding a ring in my mouth, as long as there's no arranged marriage." The Emperor pondered and said, "Very well, then you shall attend to the Crown Prince during his illness." Shouldn't you be praising me for knowing how to return kindness and then letting me go? Why is this different from what I imagined? But at least my head is temporarily safe. After the Emperor and his entourage left, I rubbed my sore knees from kneeling and slowly shuffled into the inner chamber. The inner chamber was thick with the mingled scents of medicine and blood. Xiao Lin lay on the bed, his eyes tightly shut, long lashes casting shadows over his dark-circled eyelids, his face devoid of color. His chest was wrapped in layer upon layer of bandages, yet the blood still seeped faintly through the cloth. I had never seen him so vulnerable. Wasn't this the perfect opportunity to strike while he was weak? I glanced around and saw a pair of scissors still in the basin of bloody water. Before I could approach, a young eunuch stepped forward. "What do you need, miss?" A group of imperial physicians watched me warily from all sides. I had no choice but to give up. I sat on the low stool by the bed, exhausted from the long night, my eyelids heavy with sleep. Before I knew it, I had dozed off. When I woke again, it felt like someone was touching my face. Startled, I jerked my eyes open, into a pair of gentle, profound eyes. Xiao Lin, still weak, gave a faint smile. "Miss Li, you're lying on my hand." I looked down and realized I had unknowingly fallen asleep by the bed. Using Xiao Lin's hand as a pillow, I quickly sat up straight. In our past life, we were married for 10 years, only to end up as bitter enemies. Though the man before me is now a stranger, I still can't bring myself to speak to him calmly. Xiao Ling flexed his fingers. "They're numb." He looked rather apologetic. "Would you mind helping me move them a little?" I glanced around. There wasn't a single imperial physician in the hall, nor any eunuchs in sight. "I dismissed them all earlier," he explained, seemingly noticing my confusion. "You were sleeping so soundly, I didn't have the heart to wake you." What a masterful performance of kindness. Truth be told, Xiao Ling was truly insufferable. He's held a grudge against me for 10 years for taking his rightful wife's place. Whenever he sees me, it's either sarcasm or snide remarks. He can't stand not taking a jab at me, but with outsiders, court officials, relatives, and friends, he mostly manages to put on the facade of a genial gentleman. So without those past grievances, he's now playing the role of the widely praised, gentle and respectful crown prince before me. Reluctantly, I pinched 2 of his fingers and gave them a shake. Xiao Ling chuckled. "Miss Li, my arm has gone numb." I picked it up again, suspending the entire arm in midair, and gave it a vigorous shake. This movement tugged at his wound, making Xiao Lin's brows furrow sharply in pain. I released my grip and said indifferently, "Your Highness, forgive my offense. This humble girl knows little of medicine. I shall summon the imperial physician instead." I turned toward the palace doors. Just as I reached the entrance, someone shoved them open violently. The man ignored me and rushed into the inner chamber. "Your Highness." The newcomer wept, her tears falling like pear blossoms in the rain. "Your Highness is injured so badly." Ah Yi is truly heartbroken. She clutched her chest, looking even more pained than Xiao Lin himself. Xiao Ling said calmly, "I'm fine, Miss Kui, there's no need to be sad." In the end, Xiao Ling couldn't bear to see her upset, comforting his beloved despite his severe injuries. His words only made Kui cry harder. "How can you be fine? The injury reached your heart meridian, just 1 inch off and your Highness would have." She abruptly stopped speaking, biting her lower lip. Tears welled up in her eyes, looking utterly pitiful and delicate. TSK, with such a heart-wrenching expression, what man wouldn't be moved at the sight? In their past life, Xiao Lin had loved her to the point of madness. Even when Kui Yi was betrothed to the son of the Prince of Chengyang, he still found an excuse to recall the entire Chengyang royal family back to the capital. Perhaps it was an attempt to forcibly take a minister's wife. Unfortunately, Kui Yi had vowed never to become a concubine. Thus, in the end, he failed to win the beauty's heart. Or perhaps not. Perhaps after I die, he can finally marry Kui Yi. I couldn't be bothered to watch their flirtation any longer, so I went to find the imperial physician. The physician was brewing medicine in the side hall. A group of young eunuchs were whispering among themselves. "I heard they caught yesterday's assassin." Rumor has it he was the crown prince's man. Really, you sure? Absolutely true. His name was Tang something or other. I immediately asked, is it Tang Yufeng? The young eunuch looked surprised. I think so. How did you know? How did I know? Tang Yufeng was Xiao Lin's most trusted confidant. In my past life, Xiao Lin always sent Tang Yufeng to relay messages, and it was also Tang Yufeng who escorted me out of and back to the palace. Because of his gentle nature and the fact that we could chat a bit, I had a fairly good relationship with him. But how could he be the assassin? I remember in my past life, the assassin fled after stabbing me. Your Majesty investigated for a year but still couldn't find the real culprit. Could it be that the assassination attempt in the previous life was orchestrated by Xiao Lin himself, and was I just an unlucky fool who stumbled into his scheme and ruined his plans? It's possible. That's why he hated me for so many years. The young eunuch kept pressing. Miss Li, speak up. How did you know? I covered it up. I vaguely heard the Imperial Guard commander mention this name. The eunuch scratched his head. Really? The Imperial physician happened to call me over. Give this medicine to the Crown Prince. Remember, it should be served only when the bowl feels warm to the touch, neither too hot nor too cold. What a hassle. I truly didn't want to serve the enemy from my past life. I tried to excuse myself. I'm all thumbs and might not get it right. Couldn't a more dexterous palace maid go in to attend to him instead? The head physician of the Imperial Hospital glared with bristling whiskers. Miss Li, His Majesty himself ordered you to attend to the Crown Prince's illness. The Crown Prince is already your benefactor, yet you keep making excuses. Do you not value your head? But, another physician interjected quietly. Miss Li, when I came today, your father specifically asked me to remind you to atone for your sins properly, lest you bring disaster upon the whole family. I swallowed the words on the tip of my tongue. I had no choice but to carry the medicine bowl into the inner chamber. Over there, Kui Yi was still weeping mournfully. A sudden inspiration struck me, and I pushed the medicine toward him. Your Highness, it's time to take your medicine. Since Kui Yi was so fond of him, surely she would compete to feed him the medicine, right? Sure enough, Kui Yi reached out to me. Let me. I quickly handed it to her. She lifted the medicine bowl, blew on it twice, then gently brought it to Xiao Lin's lips. I secretly rejoiced in my heart. Burn him, sure enough. The medicine was so scalding that Xiao Lin trembled the moment it touched his lips, spilling a spoonful onto the bedding. Kui Yi gasped in alarm. Your Highness, forgive me. Servants rushed over, some wiping the spill, others trying to soothe him. Kui Yi, frightened like a rabbit again, stood wide-eyed and flustered. On the verge of tears, Xiao Lin comforted her. You're a delicate noble lady, unaccustomed to serving others. Let someone else handle this. Me. And that someone else would be me, right? She's precious, while I'm worthless. Is that it? Upon hearing this, Kui Yi immediately handed the medicine bowl to me. I was just considering whether to deliberately spill the medicine on Xiao Lin when he seemed to read my mind. I wouldn't dare trouble Miss Li. Let the eunuch handle it. That's more like it. I went to the outer hall to have some tea, and shortly after, Kui Yi also came out. She stood silently beside me, as if she had something to say. So your name is Li Xiyin. She curled her lips slightly. How did you end up with such a name? My eldest sister was father's first child, so she was named Shoin, first sound. After that, he couldn't be bothered to put much thought into it, so he just named us in order. I happened to be the fourth child in the family, however, in my previous life. My father, fearing embarrassment, specifically changed my name to Li Xiyin before I married into the Eastern Palace. Faced with her deliberate mockery, I didn't respond and simply took a sip of tea. Kui Yi sneered as she walked up to examine me. I never knew before that His Highness the Crown Prince was on such intimate terms with you that he would risk his life to protect you. In my past life, I had little interaction with her. She voluntarily relinquished her position, which led to the grudge of her being forced into marriage by the old emperor. That very day, no sooner had I left the palace than she slapped me across the face. She cursed me bitterly. Li Xiyin, your heart is wicked. Sooner or later, you'll die in the depths of the palace. In the end, her words came true. In her previous life, she adamantly refused to be a concubine and looked down upon the position of the Crown Prince's consort, which always made me admire her. Who would have thought she's also quite prone to jealousy? After some thought, I explained, Miss Kui, His Highness the Crown Prince wasn't saving me, he was saving you. It's just that the assassin's sword was too swift, and he unfortunately got injured. Kui hesitated. Is that true? I nodded. Absolutely true. I had no prior connection with the Crown Prince. Why would His Highness save me? Upon hearing this, Kui seemed lost in thought, then suddenly a blush spread across her cheeks. Who knows what she was thinking of, but she lifted her skirts and dashed into the inner chamber, probably to exchange heartfelt words with Xiao Lin. I breathed a sigh of relief. Well done, they should be brought together and bound for life in this lifetime. Never have the slightest connection with them again. Kui came once, but Xiao Lin was mentally and physically exhausted, so the imperial physician forbade her from visiting again. I was ordered to attend to the sick. Wanting to leave but unable to, these past few days, Xiao Lin has mostly been in a deep slumber, leaving me to keep watch in the hall. The imperial physicians were in the side chamber, where they could take turns resting on a few makeshift cots. When exhaustion overwhelmed me, I would either crouch in a corner for a quick nap or, when no one was looking, doze off with my head on the desk. By the 5th day, I could bear it no longer, seizing the moment when the night-watching eunuch was absent. I quietly climbed onto the daybed. I only intended to take a short nap. Little did I know I was so exhausted that I slept straight through until dawn the next day. A luxurious black fur cloak was draped over me, cozy and warm. Looking around, the surroundings were silent and still. Xiao Lin remained fast asleep. I carried the heavy cloak to the outer hall. Who covered me with this? The young eunuchs all shook their heads. One young eunuch hesitated before speaking. Miss Li, to be honest, you've been too presumptuous. How dare you sleep on the couch while attending to His Highness? It's only because His Highness is kind-hearted that he told us not to wake you. I froze, frowning. So it was His Highness who draped this over me. How is this possible? His Highness shouldn't be able to get out of bed. That makes sense. A doctor's compassion knows no bounds. Perhaps some elderly physician came to check on me at midnight and, seeing my pitiful state, covered me with it. I quietly hung the cloak back where it belonged. After a night's sleep, I felt much more refreshed. In the afternoon, Xiao Lin briefly regained consciousness. He stared at me for a moment before suddenly speaking. My condition seems to be improving. Miss Li has worked hard these past few days. You may return home today. Really? My heart leaped with joy, though I dared not show it on my face. I demurred. But His Majesty decreed that I should attend to you until your Highness fully recovers. Xiao Lin pursed his lips with a faint smile. I will report to His Majesty. You may return now. Wonderful. I no longer wished to maintain false courtesy with Xiao Lin and happily packed my things to go home. Before I even reached home, news came that Xiao Lin had disregarded the physician's orders. Stubbornly risen from bed to walk, causing his wound to rupture, he collapsed unconscious on the spot. Serves him right. Let him suffer the pain. When the plaque of the Li mansion came into view, I inexplicably felt that peculiar mix of excitement and nervousness one experiences when returning home after a long absence. In my previous life, after hastily getting married, I didn't have many opportunities to meet with my family. When I was the crown princess, I could still see them a few times a year. After becoming empress, 2 incidents occurred: internal palace strife and the turmoil of deposing the empress. Xiao Ling vented his anger on the Li family. He demoted my father and brothers, and forbade my mother and sisters from entering the palace. Counting carefully, it's been over a year since we last met. The thought that this moment was 10 years ago, with my mother in good health and my younger sister still a child, makes my steps much lighter. The servants at the mansion, having received instructions, came early to fetch me. They led me to my father's study. Both my father and mother were there. As soon as he saw me, my father sternly scolded, "Kneel down." I didn't understand why, but I obediently knelt down as told. Father berated me. "The crown prince was severely injured because of you, and His Majesty ordered you to attend to him. Yet you, lazy and evasive, would serving for a few days kill you. Have you no thought for our family?" Father had always been strict, prioritizing the family's greater cause, so I dared not speak back. Mother waited for him to finish scolding before speaking up for me. The palace sent someone to return her. Likely by His Majesty's decree. "Husband, don't be too harsh." Céline has been frightened these past few days, her face already grown thin from distress. Father glared. "You're just spoiling her." After a pause, Father asked, "How did the crown prince come to save you that day?" Another misunderstanding like this. I had no choice but to repeat that the person the crown prince wanted to save was Kui Yi. Who would have thought the angrier father became as he listened? "How did Miss Kui manage to win the crown prince's favor, while you couldn't even seize the opportunity to get close to him? After just a few days of nursing him, you were sent back." Father came from humble origins and had struggled his entire life to rise to the position of Vice Minister of Works. He always dreamed of bringing glory to the family and climbing even higher. Yet, to his dismay, his sons were disappointments, mediocre in talent, so he had no choice but to rely on his children's marriages to secure a better future. In my past life, I took a sword for the crown prince. And he couldn't have been happier. First, he wept to his colleagues about how I might not survive. Then he ran to the palace every day, begging the emperor for rare medicinal herbs. In short, he made a grand spectacle of my great deed in saving the prince. The emperor, being a benevolent ruler who values his reputation, was the one who arranged the marriage between me and Xiao Lin. Unfortunately, I ultimately failed to fulfill his wishes. With the empress out of favor, this old father-in-law of the nation also suffered misfortune. But all that is in the past now. The most urgent matter at hand is to appease his anger. I lowered my eyes submissively, letting him scold me. Father berated me for a while, but seeing that I remained unmoved, he left in a huff. Only after he had gone did Mother come to help me up. My child, you've suffered, she said. Mother's gentle words made my tears fall instantly. In our last meeting of the previous life, Mother's temples were streaked with white hair, but now she still looks as graceful and elegant as I remember. I threw myself into her arms, crying loudly without caring about appearances. Actually, she isn't my birth mother. I was born of a concubine. My birth mother was of low status and died early. My mother is the legal wife, and all the girls in our family were raised by her. Though she wasn't my birth mother, she was gentle and loving, truly a mother who cherished me. She's the one I miss most in the palace. Mother held me gently and comforted me. There, don't cry. If your little sister sees you, she'll laugh at you. That's right. Fourth sister is such a big girl and still crying like a baby. A crisp, childish voice. I wiped my tears and looked closely. It was sixth sister. My sixth sister is only 8 years old now. The last time I saw her in my previous life, she was already 17, and our mother brought her to the palace to visit me. At that time, she had grown into a graceful young woman, looking very much like me. I remember touching her cheek and saying with a laugh, "Our sixth sister has blossomed into such a beauty. I wonder how many matchmakers will wear out our family's doorstep." Mother also smiled. "If she could have just a fraction of your highness's blessings, I would be perfectly content." Later, Xiao Lin seemed to arrange a marriage for her, but by then I was already at death's door, and can no longer recall which family's young master she married into. I tapped her nose playfully. "You're the clever one." I was at home, thoroughly enjoying the joys of family life, serving my parents and keeping my sister's company. I completely forgot about Xiao Lin, who was neither dead nor alive. By the time news came from the palace, 2 months had already passed. The heavens are indeed fair. In my past life, I lay bedridden for 2 months. In this life, it's his turn to lie down for 2 months. Now we're even. After 2 months of cautious observation, my father, seeing no sign of punishment from His Majesty, began scheming about marriage alliances for his children again, without the life-saving favor from our previous lives to leverage. He couldn't aspire to royal connections, so he set his sights on court officials instead. The only son of Marquis Dingnan, Jiang Yihan, he thinks highly of him and wants to marry me off to him. He had my mother take me to worship Buddha, just to catch a distant glimpse of Jiang Yihan. Having spent 10 miserable years with Xiao Lin in my past life, I had no intention of marrying again. Unable to refuse my parents' arrangement, I planned to go through the motions. My elder brother escorted us there, intending to take Jiang Yihan to the bamboo pavilion behind the temple so we could meet each other. But unfortunately, we encountered an unexpected guest, Xiao Lin. He was enjoying tea in the bamboo pavilion. Seeing me approach, he smiled gently. "Miss Li, what a coincidence." I glanced around warily and, noticing the presence of guards, had no choice but to curtsy in greeting. "Your Highness, why are you here?" Xiao Lin, having just recovered from a serious illness. "I've come specially to thank the Bodhisattva for their protection." As if anyone would believe that, in his first year as emperor, he issued an edict halting the construction of Buddhist temples and forced 1,800 monks to return to secular life. Would someone like that truly believe in bodhisattvas? Probably discussing some shady scheme again. I didn't expose him. Just as my eldest brother arrived, the young man beside him stood tall and graceful. With bright piercing eyes and strikingly handsome features, our gazes met briefly in midair before he quickly looked away, the tips of his ears turning red. Then he saw Xiao Lin and froze momentarily before quickly stepping forward to bow in greeting. Xiao Lin said calmly, "No need for formalities, Yihan." After exchanging a few pleasantries, Xiao Lin invited us to taste the tea, and so the 4 of us sat down together in this peculiar manner. A moment of silence passed between us. Noticing the unfamiliar attendants bustling around Xiao Lin, I suddenly remembered Tang Yufeng, so I casually inquired, "What happened to that assassin?" My eldest brother immediately glared at me. "Don't ask about things that don't concern you." Xiao Lin remained composed as he explained to me. He refuses to reveal the mastermind behind this. Currently detained in the prison, His Majesty will make the final decision. Of course he wouldn't confess. Isn't the mastermind behind him precisely you? But these words I only thought to myself, not daring to voice such reckless accusations. Xiao Lin holds grudges. Jiang Yihan carefully weighed his words. I heard that assassin once worked in the Eastern Palace. Xiao Ling blew away the tea foam and took a sip. I have many enemies. It's normal for someone to want my life. Well, that was pointedly blunt. Wasn't this clearly implying that his brother, Prince Qi Xiaowei, was the mastermind behind it? Jiang Yihan frowned deeply. And my elder brother dared not make a sound. Prince Qi Xiaowei was indeed a match for Xiao Lin, but had always been overshadowed by him. Compared to Prince Qi, in his past life, Xiao Lin was more wary of the cunning and unpredictable old emperor. Why is he attacking Prince Qi now? Was his original plan to use the bitter flesh strategy to bring down Prince Qi? But he was thinking a bit too simply, not to mention Prince Qi's firm foundation and powerful maternal clan. Even the old emperor himself wouldn't want Prince Qi to fall while the Crown Prince's faction grows increasingly powerful. At 20, Xiao Lin was still young and needed 5 more years of tempering before he could clearly see the situation at 25. At this thought, I couldn't help but feel amused. In my past life, I knew little about the affairs of the previous dynasty. Xiao Lin often mocked me, calling me foolish and clumsy, saying that if it weren't for his protection, I wouldn't even know how I died. But now, I know the trends of the next 10 years like the back of my hand. I can see even clearer than these shrewd people. Xiao Lin suddenly asked, "What are you laughing at, Miss Li?" I merely curled the corner of my lips, not even a sound escaped. Must he police even this? Just as I was about to make up some excuse, a maid by my mother's side came to call me back. Originally, my eldest brother had intended for me to exchange a few words with Jiang Yihan, but with Xiao Lin's interference, not a single word was spoken. I didn't mind, it was just a formality anyway. My elder brother and I stood up to leave. Suddenly a yellow-robed eunuch came running over, completely out of breath. "Miss Li, His Majesty summons you." For His Majesty to summon me to the palace was truly unusual. In this life, I'm not the crown princess, nor do I have any ties with Xiao Lin. Why would he summon me? I couldn't figure it out no matter how hard I tried. Xiao Lin was also puzzled. He tried probing several times, but the eunuch attendants all shook their heads, saying they didn't know. It seems to have been a last-minute decision. His Majesty only summoned me to the palace. Both my mother and eldest brother were very worried. Xiao Lin said he was also returning to the palace and could give me a ride, so they needn't worry. So now I'm inside his crown prince's carriage. The carriage is spacious, with Xiao Lin resting with his eyes closed. I'm trying hard to recall. The current emperor wielded both kindness and authority in court affairs, alternated between warmth and indifference in the harem, and was unpredictably changeable toward his sons. Thus, court officials, concubines, and sons alike feared him greatly, yet he treated me exceptionally well. He cherished his reputation dearly and cared deeply about maintaining his image as a benevolent ruler in the hearts of the people. So even though Xiao Lin kept thinking about deposing me, thanks to the protection of the old emperor, my position as crown princess remained rock solid. But after his death, my life became much harder. There's an empress dowager in the harem who, relying on having raised Xiao Ling since childhood as his birth mother, is always meddling in affairs. Then there's consort Li, the mother of Prince Qi. The two are like fire and water, constantly using me to stir up trouble. The harem is in utter chaos, and with Xiao Ling disliking me, they're scheming in every possible way to vie for power. On the eve of the palace turmoil, the two of them even joined forces to sideline me. The empress, I suffered bitterly. So later, I occasionally thought, if only the old emperor were still here, under his protection, my days as the crown princess were, at the very least, carefree. At this moment, the thought of seeing him didn't frighten me. Instead, I felt a hint of anticipation. Xiao Lin had opened his eyes at some point and was silently staring at me. His gaze made me slightly uncomfortable, so I asked irritably, "What are you looking at?" The corners of Xiao Lin's lips curled up. I've noticed that Miss Li often bursts into laughter unexpectedly. He paused. Did something happy come to mind? I curled my lips and muttered under my breath, "None of your." Before the last 2 words could escape my lips, the horse suddenly neighed and jolted violently, flinging me straight into Xiao Lin's arms. Xiao Lin let out a muffled grunt and tightened his grip around my waist. The carriage lurched forward several more steps before the servant managed to rein it to a halt. Xiao Ling said coldly, "What happened?" A few stray dogs darted across and startled the horses. The wheel ran over a merchant's goods, causing the jolt. The servant replied, still shaken, "Is your highness unharmed?" Xiao Ling glanced down. When the wheel had jolted earlier, it had thrown me out. I grabbed at him wildly and tore open his collar. So now, his clothes were in disarray, with red scratch marks visible below his collarbone. It was utterly humiliating and awkward. The servant still waited nervously. "Your highness, I am unharmed." After replying thus, he suddenly chuckled. "Is Lady Li concerned about me, wishing to see my wound?" "Me, her." I secretly raised my eyes, glancing downward along his neck, catching sight of the injury on his chest, a wound the length of a finger, its scab gone, leaving behind a faint red scar. I instinctively reached to touch my lower abdomen. There had once been an identical scar there too. Xiao Lin released his arm from around my waist and leisurely straightened his clothes. Perhaps because I had just bumped into his wound, his movements as he adjusted his garments were unusually gentle and slow. In his previous life, he was robust and upright, full of energy and brute strength. During the day, he would accompany the emperor on hunts, and at night, he'd come back to exhaust me, keeping at it all night long. But now, his breath is as faint as a thread, as if he could die at any moment. I suddenly asked, "Will this injury leave lasting effects?" Xiao Lin's fingers paused. I didn't mean to pity him. In my past life, I injured my lower abdomen. Though it seemed to heal, it left lasting damage, making pregnancy difficult. Yet Xiao Ling was obsessed with having a legitimate firstborn son, insisting I bear his heir first. I've suffered so much for this. If only Xiao Lin could be left with lasting effects from his illness, he should taste the bitterness I've endured. Only then would he truly understand. He would never mock me during an argument by saying, "Who asked you to take that sword for me?" Remembering those bitter moments, my nose tingled with sorrow. I turned my head away and wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes. Xiao Ling had already straightened his clothes. He looked surprised and said, "Is Miss Li crying out of heartache?" "Absolutely not." Xiao Lin stopped laughing. "I thought my heroic rescue would have moved the lady's heart." I mocked. "Wasn't your highness trying to save Miss Kui?" Xiao Lin fell silent. I assumed he was tacitly agreeing, but then he suddenly spoke, "I want to save you." After saying this, he fell silent and never gave me an explanation until we entered the palace. When we stood before the emperor, we noticed another person kneeling at the foot of the steps. His hands and feet were shackled in iron chains, his hair a tangled mess, his body covered in blood and filth. The emperor pointed a finger. "Speak for yourself." The man slowly raised his head, his gaze circling between my face and the crown prince's. "I say, the person I wish to kill is Li Xiyin." I was stunned. The person before me was none other than Tang Yufeng. But, does he want to kill me? Why doesn't he recognize me even now? Instinctively, I turned to look at Xiao Lin, who kept his eyes lowered and remained silent. My heart feels as if it's been stabbed by a knife. Though the person before me doesn't recognize me, I remember when I was under house arrest, he brought me food, medicine, and a little kitten. I remember when I was being bullied. He fearlessly drew his sword and stood up to protect me. I remember on my deathbed craving a bite of home-style pastries, so he sent someone to fetch our old servant, comforting me. "Your Highness, set your heart at ease, you will recover." How could such a person possibly want to kill me? Yet I couldn't deceive myself. That sword thrust during the Chongyang banquet was indeed aimed at me. I thought I was in the way, but it turns out I was the main target. My heart ached. "Why?" Tang Yufeng said expressionlessly. "Because I hate you." I froze. "What?" he sneered mockingly. "Because your mother climbed the social ladder, abandoning both me and my father." I grew even more confused. Through his sorrowful narration, I finally learned the truth. It turned out my birth mother had once been his father's wife. The family fortunes declined, with Tang's father addicted to alcohol and gambling. Unable to bear it any longer, his mother abandoned both father and son, entering the Li household as a servant. Later, my father Li Khan took her as a concubine, and she gave birth to me. Eventually, his father drank himself to death, having no means to support himself. He was passed around and sold multiple times, ultimately becoming a servant of the crown prince. He had already resigned himself to fate, but that night at the Double Ninth Festival banquet, he saw me. I was radiant and splendid, the young lady of the Li household. While he was merely a servant living at others' mercy, yet he couldn't suppress the hatred in his heart, hatred for his mother, and hatred for me. That's why he lost his mind and, in a fit of rage, took my life. I was completely stunned. So, Tang Yufeng and I are half-siblings with the same mother but different fathers. So the reason Tang Yufeng was good to me in our past lives was because I was his sister, and married to the crown prince. Was that why he had no choice but to take care of me? My mind is in complete chaos. Unable to distinguish what's real from what's false, I looked at Xiao Lin, whose brows were tightly furrowed. Clearly, he didn't know either. I turned my pleading gaze toward the emperor. The emperor remained calm as he asked Xiao Lin, "Crown Prince, did you know that your subordinate and Lady Li are siblings?" Xiao Lin shook his head. "Your son did not know." The emperor chuckled lightly. "If you didn't know, why did you rush to save Lady Li?" Xiao Lin cupped his hands respectfully. "Your son acted out of chivalry. To save women and children first is the virtue of a gentleman. He speaks of benevolence and righteousness with effortless ease." The emperor offered no comment. He tapped the table with his fingers, then after a long pause declared, "An assassination attempt before the palace hall is the crime of treason. Drag him away and execute him immediately." I hurriedly looked at Xiao Lin. He held his breath and remained silent, showing no intention of pleading for mercy. Indeed, the emperor had just been testing him to see if he was the mastermind. How could he possibly plead for mercy now, as the guards stepped forward to drag him away? I panicked and suddenly knelt down. "Your Majesty, this humble subject has something to say." The emperor raised his hand to stop the guards. "Speak." I knelt down. "I beg your Majesty to spare his life." The emperor became intrigued and smiled. "Yet he tried to kill you." "I know, but, not to mention whether he's my brother or not, his kindness to me in my past life was genuine. Trapped in the palace for 10 years, having someone who often looked out for me could be considered a true friend." "Right." I bowed again. "This humble subject knows a secret that concerns your Majesty's safety. Spare Tang Yufeng, and I shall reveal it to you immediately." The emperor's expression darkened. Xiao Lin sternly rebuked, "Li Xiyin, don't speak recklessly. How is this reckless talk, after all? This secret is known only to me and His Majesty. Even Xiao Lin is unaware of it." Counting the days, it should be less than 2 months, at that time. I was the crown princess and went to the palace as usual to pay my respects to the empress. Because I exchanged a few light-hearted words with consort Li in the imperial garden, the empress took offense and punished me by making me kneel for 2 hours. For some reason, the emperor heard about this and summoned me to his presence. The emperor originally intended to offer a few words of comfort and then bestow some gifts, but that day I had knelt for too long. And when I stepped forward to receive the emperor's calligraphy, my knees gave way. I stumbled forward and shattered the emperor's soup bowl. I repeatedly kowtowed to beg for forgiveness, but the emperor showed no anger. Instead, he had someone reprimand the empress, criticizing her for being too harsh on the younger generation. In the midst of this commotion, the emperor's caged sparrow flew out and pecked at a few mouthfuls of the sweet soup, then immediately convulsed and collapsed. The soup was poisoned, not fatal, but it would leave one dizzy and weak for several days, and those few days happened to coincide with the New Year's celebrations. When the heaven worship ceremony was to be held, the emperor was furious, forbidding any disclosure and prohibiting me from informing the crown prince. Later, several high-ranking officials were executed in the court, though I'm not certain exactly who they were. I suspect someone might be planning to exploit the heaven worship ceremony for their own schemes. If the emperor cannot attend, the crown prince will undoubtedly act in his stead. Something happened during the heaven worship ceremony. It could have been major or minor. Someone wanted to frame Xiao Lin, but due to my unexpected actions, the grand ceremony was ultimately completed successfully. As for whether the mastermind behind it was caught, I don't know. I offer this secret in exchange for Tang Yufeng's life. Upon hearing this, the emperor did not fully believe me. He asked coldly, "With just a dream, do you think I would believe you?" I lowered my eyes and replied, "This concerns your Majesty's safety. You may detain Tang Yufeng first. If what I say proves true, you can release him then." The emperor sneered, "Li Xiyin, do you realize that if nothing happens in 2 months, you'll be guilty of deceiving the throne? The entire Li family will be executed then." My palms were sweating, but the words were already spoken. What could I do now? Gritting my teeth, I said, "Your Majesty is a benevolent ruler who surely distinguishes right from wrong. This subject believes she is correct. If I'm wrong, let the punishment fall on me alone. I beg your Majesty to hold only me accountable." The emperor pondered for a moment. "Granted," he added, "if there's even half a word of falsehood from you, in 2 months you and Tang Yufeng will both be executed by 1,000 cuts." I took a deep breath. No wonder Xiao Lin feared him in the previous life. When ruthless, he truly was ruthless. When revealing the secret, only the emperor and I were present. When I came out, I found Xiao Lin waiting for me. He looked worried. What did you say to His Majesty? I replied calmly. I can't tell you. Xiao Lin met my gaze in silence. You shouldn't have done this. The Emperor's mind is unfathomable. It's rare for him to speak so frankly. In my past life, he always reminded me to be cautious before the Emperor and not to say anything inappropriate. He always thought I was a fool. But he didn't know the Emperor often confided in me privately about his children's troubles. Perhaps the Emperor thinks I'm a dull but reliable person. Perhaps because I've never spoken favorably of anyone in front of the Emperor. After some thought, I asked, Tang Yufeng didn't try to kill me out of hatred, did he? Xiao Ling's eyes narrowed. You knew, I guess. Tang Yufeng probably did it to clear the Crown Prince's name, to exonerate the Crown Prince. He came up with an excuse, but the excuse couldn't be too flimsy. So he dredged up the secret buried deep in his heart. Tang Yufeng was the Crown Prince's trusted confidant. An assassination attempt in the imperial presence, regardless of the target, was undoubtedly treason, logically speaking. The Crown Prince couldn't be completely absolved of responsibility, yet the Emperor believed a flimsy excuse without question. Moreover, he only executed Tang Yufeng without further investigation. This meant the Emperor was still protecting the Crown Prince. Why did the Emperor in my past life choose me, a lowborn daughter with no family background or connections, to be the Crown Princess? Perhaps the assassin escaped. The Emperor truly suspects the Crown Prince of treason, in this life. The assassin was caught. Though the Crown Prince is still implicated, he nearly lost his life and had almost no follow-up schemes, making it impossible to frame anyone else, so his suspicions faded considerably once more. After some thought, I said to him, May I ask a favor of your Highness? Xiao Lin replied with pleasant surprise, Speak. Family scandals shouldn't be aired in public, for the sake of my background. Could your Highness declare to others that you originally intended to rescue Kui Yi, but accidentally saved me instead? Would that be acceptable? Xiao Lin's smile gradually faded from his eyes. After a long pause, he forced a bitter smile. Miss Li, you're making it very difficult for me. What was so difficult for him? Didn't he like Kui Yi the most? Can't I just let him have his grand, soul-stirring romance? So hard to please, I mentally complained all the way home. My parents looked nervous and asked what the Emperor had said. I said the Emperor brought out the assassin to confront me, but nothing came of it. My parents breathed a sigh of relief, then asked me what I thought of Jiang Yihan. What should I say? We only met once. He's a well-mannered, handsome young master from a noble family. What opinion could I possibly have? I fidgeted awkwardly. Father, mother, Xiyin still wishes to stay by your side for a few more years. My father furrowed his brows. Still needing companionship at your age? What 17-year-old maiden isn't married yet? Are you looking down on young Master Jiang? My eldest brother chuckled meaningfully from the side. Father, never mind Master Jiang for now. I think His Highness the Crown Prince has taken a liking to our Xiyin. My father immediately perked up. Truly, my brother said, of course. Why else would he have let Xiyin ride in his carriage with him? I quickly waved my hands in denial. No. The Crown Prince only took pity on me and brought me into the palace. Besides, His Highness is devoted to Miss Kui. How could he possibly have any interest in me? I grew anxious. Elder brother, don't recklessly claim connections. What if we anger the Crown Prince and Minister Kui? Would our family even survive? Elder brother trembled, yet father seemed unwilling to let go of his ambition. Really, I thought the Crown Prince did seem somewhat interested, even if not as the primary consort. Becoming a secondary consort would still be fine. I'm so anxious. Must I end up like in my past life, where Xiao Lin and I grew to despise each other? I gritted my teeth and threw caution to the wind. I like young Master Jiang. Father and elder brother looked over. I sighed in frustration. Father, I might as well confess I fancy young Master Jiang. If marrying Jiang Yihan meant venturing into the unknown, then, marrying Xiao Lin would be repeating the same mistake. I refused to repeat the same mistake. My father believed my words and began arranging my marriage to Jiang Yihan. Both families were willing, and after some discussion, the engagement was swiftly settled before the new year. The following year during the Lantern Festival, Jiang Yihan, now my fiancé, invited me to admire the flower lanterns. Jiang Yihan was extremely proper, personally driving the carriage to fetch me, fearing he might offend me. He even deliberately brought several maids to attend to us. My sixth sister was envious. Fourth sister is so fortunate. I wonder if I'll ever meet such a gentle, considerate, and understanding husband. I flicked her nose. How old are you? Already thinking about marriage? The sixth sister stuck out her tongue. Though I said this, I felt slightly comforted inside. No matter how my future interactions with Jiang Yihan might go, At least this person's manners were impeccable, making one feel as if bathed in a spring breeze, unlike that scoundrel Xiao Lin, who would always complain about this and that when taking me out of the palace, ruining all the fun in the end. During the Lantern Festival, every corner was adorned with colorful lanterns and decorations, brimming with festive excitement. The street was lined with countless stalls and shops standing closely side by side. Jiang Yihan picked out some jewelry for me. One good turn deserves another. So I decided to give him a gift in return. I took him to an antique shop and picked out several fine treasures of excellent quality. Jiang Yihan asked curiously, "Xin, how did you know this jade pot is from the Han dynasty?" How did I know? Of course, I'd seen it with my own eyes, in his past life. Xiao Lin loved collecting these trinkets the most. Whenever he acquired a treasure, he would come to me to show off. Never mind whether I wanted to hear it or not, he'd drag me over and launch into a lengthy introduction. This belonged to a great general of the previous dynasty. This was the Han dynasty prime ministers, and this comes from a warring state's royal family. The two treasures in his hands now were ones he had hunted down in this very antique shop during his past life. But I don't plan to tell Jiang Yihan about these things. Jiang Yihan is still carefully examining the jade pendant in his hand. This jade pendant is warm and translucent, though slightly flawed from the wear of time, it remains a superior treasure. He marveled with admiration. Is this really Sieren's from the Jin dynasty? I nodded. Yes, put it away quickly. It wouldn't be good if the boss changes his mind later. Jiang Yihan tucked it into his chest, his eyes curving into crescents. All right, since it's a gift from Siin, I'll definitely treasure it carefully. After he put it away, I led him to the second floor. These are all ordinary items. The calligraphy and paintings on the second floor are truly exceptional. Jiang Yihan was astonished. He couldn't wait to look around, but felt slightly disappointed. Sister Siin, the brushwork of this Dushan hermit's paintings appears rather unskilled, hardly what one would call masterful. Indeed, those who had studied painting didn't think much of them. Yet the value of these paintings lay not in their technique, but in their creator. The hermit of Dushan is the emperor. The emperor has no other hobbies but painting. He takes great pride in his painting skills, yet he doesn't want his court officials to know, fearing they might flatter him for personal gain. Thus, he often sends his calligraphy and paintings to the market to be sold, to see if anyone appreciates them. If someone bought his paintings, he would be delighted. He would also hold the buyer in higher regard, so I'm not just giving him paintings, I'm giving him a career boost. I selected several paintings that His Majesty particularly favored and bought them to present to Jiang Yihan. Although Jiang Yihan didn't understand why I'd spend a fortune on such paintings, she was still quite touched by my gift-giving gesture. The moment I finished paying, the shopkeeper approached me. "Young lady, our master requests your presence." "Master?" I glanced upstairs. Was the emperor here? I lifted my skirts to ascend, Jiang Yihan following me, only to be stopped. "The master has invited only Miss Li." Jiang Yihan stepped in front of me, his expression grave. "Miss Li is my betrothed. How can I let you take her alone?" I reassured him. "Young Master Jiang, I know his master." Jiang Yihan still refused. A sound came from the third floor as someone stepped out of a room and stood beneath the corridor. "Miss Li." It was Crown Prince Xiao Lin. His expression was indifferent, and without wasting words, he gestured for me to follow. "The master requests your presence." Two burly men stood guard in the corridor, leaving Jiang Yihan stunned. For the crown prince to personally come out and invite me, the identity of that family elder went without saying. I gave his hand a light pat. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." I went upstairs alone. Passing by the doorway, Xiao Lin raised his eyes. I kept my gaze straight ahead, brushing past him. Inside, a long table was strewn with paints and drawing paper everywhere. The walls were covered with the emperor's unfinished masterpieces. The emperor wielded his brush with great enthusiasm, painting freely and joyfully. I knelt and bowed in reverence. The emperor didn't permit me to rise. "Do you know why we have summoned you?" I replied. "Since your majesty didn't execute me before the new year, it means my words were correct, as this isn't about punishment." "Your servant doesn't know the reason." The emperor chuckled. "How cunning." He set down his brush and tucked his hands into his sleeves. He locked eyes with me kneeling on the ground. "We are curious about that dream of yours." He asked. "In the dream, what were you to us?" I frowned. Before I could think of how to respond, he continued. "Don't speak yet, let me guess." He stroked his beard. "You even know about my soup, which means you must serve in the imperial presence. Are you a palace maid?" He shook his head. "No, your father Li Khan was ambitious but lacked talent, though skilled in scheming. He was as timid as a mouse, he would never dare commit a crime punishable by the extermination of his entire clan. My father would be heartbroken if he knew the emperor spoke of him this way. The emperor paused, narrowing his eyes. My concubine, I hurriedly denied. No. The emperor grew even more curious. Oh, then what is it? I turned my head to glance at the door. The emperor understood and dismissed everyone. I saw the shadow outside the door leave. Knowing I couldn't hide it from him, I simply told the truth. In the dream, I was your majesty's daughter-in-law. The emperor suddenly understood. Oh, that makes sense now. Before I could finish speaking, he suddenly raised his hand to stop me. Don't speak. Let me guess again, which of my sons did you marry? How come I never knew His Majesty had a hobby for solving cases and reasoning? Since His Majesty forbade me from speaking, I can only say I'm all ears to hear the details. The emperor pondered. Your age matches Prince Chi's perfectly, but you're merely the illegitimate daughter of a fourth-rank Ministry of Works official. If I betrothed you to Prince Chi, how could Consort Li ever agree? He shook his head. The Crown Prince is even more impossible. My heart ached inexplicably. Truth be told, even the emperor thought me unworthy of Prince Chi. Born of his favored consort, let alone the crown prince of the nation, in my past life, becoming the crown princess was entirely due to the fate brought by that single knife strike. I waited quietly for his profound opinion. The emperor frowned. But the other princes are still too young, the ages don't match. Suddenly, his eyes widened. Could you be a concubine of the crown prince or Prince Chi, a serving maid? Before I could speak, he dismissed the idea himself. Why would I value a mere concubine or maid enough to bestow calligraphy and paintings? He truly cares about his calligraphy and paintings. Seeing him pondering for a long time without any clue, I began to explain. In my dream, I was the crown princess. I recounted my past life's experiences to the emperor in full detail. Speaking of that sword's favor, the emperor bestowed a marriage, yet discord arose in the Eastern Palace. I spoke of the emperor's protection and the crown prince's aversion and displeasure. I concealed the pain of my days as empress, but by the end, unbeknownst to myself, tears had begun to fall. Perhaps those final years were simply too bitter to the point where there's no one to turn to, no one to confide in. Only when seeing the still kind emperor before me could I not help but want to pour out my heart, to seek some comfort. After hearing this, the emperor remained silent for a long while. He let out a long, deep sigh. Get up. I stood up, my legs numb and tingling. The emperor suddenly asked, in which year did I pass away? I froze. Could I say it? No, I couldn't. No one can face their own death with equanimity. Moreover, I hadn't mentioned what would happen after his passing just now. I cautiously replied. I don't know, I was only crown princess for 7 years, the emperor said in a low voice. You mean you died while you were crown princess? I didn't say that, you said it, and I said, those were all dreams, a real dream. I remained silent, neither admitting nor denying. The emperor sneered coldly. Since you claim I'm the only one protecting you, then how dare the crown prince depose you and the empress dare bully you while I'm still here? My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't considered that point. Indeed, life had been bearable while the emperor was still around. I fell to my knees with a thud. This humble subject truly didn't know. In those final years, I was gravely ill and my mind was unclear. The emperor, whether he believed it or not, pressed no further. He sighed helplessly. Let it be, he continued. In your dream you took an arrow for the crown prince, yet in reality it was he who took one for you. Perhaps fate isn't finished with you yet. Maybe I should. I feared he might suddenly take a fancy to arrange a marriage for me, so I quickly declined. Your subject is already betrothed. The emperor froze. What? I stated plainly. Your subject is now engaged. The young master Jiang downstairs is my betrothed. I enunciated each word clearly. I beg your majesty to let me make my own choice for once. The emperor was left speechless by my retort, his fingers tapping the table for a long while. Leave. I bowed in gratitude and rose to exit. Just as I reached the door, he suddenly asked, in the 3rd month of spring, will there be any significant events? Good heavens, was he treating me like an imperial astronomer now? I struggled to recall. After much deliberation, I managed to dredge up a faint memory from an old case. During the royal hunt, someone tried to harm the crown prince. The spring hunt in the 3rd month, Crown Prince Xiao Lin spent the day hunting with the emperor, only to suddenly barge into the side chamber of my palace that night. Without a word, he tore at my clothes, pleading for intimacy. Furious, I slapped him across the face, clenching my undergarment between his teeth. He begged for forgiveness in a hoarse voice. What a night of relentless torment that was. The next day, I was too exhausted to pay my respects on time and was scolded by the Empress after returning to the palace from the hunting expedition. The Crown Prince was suddenly placed under house arrest. He was confined to the Eastern Palace for a month. During that month, he wasn't idle either, bickering with me, picking fights every day, and constantly pulling at me. At first I thought he had offended the Emperor by saying the wrong thing. Later I learned that someone had framed him during the hunting expedition by adding an aphrodisiac to his dear blood wine, because on that day, the wife of the Chengyang prince's heir, Qiyi, was also at the temporary palace. Someone had set a trap, intending to tarnish the Crown Prince's reputation with the scandal of defiling a subject's wife. The Crown Prince did indeed meet privately with Qiyi. They were genuinely moved by passion and nearly crossed the line, but he realized he had been set up and managed to escape with his last shred of sobriety. Qiyi's husband, Lu Kai, the heir of Chengyang Prince, was deliberately plied with alcohol that night and left at the military camp. Upon returning, he found Qiyi in disheveled clothing and flew into a rage, but they couldn't find the adulterer, so someone falsely accused, claiming to have seen the Crown Prince entering the Crown Princess's chamber. Xiao Lin flatly denied it, saying he had been in my room the whole time. Lu Kai didn't believe him and demanded to confront me, but that night's madness left marks all over my body and face. And Xiao Lin absolutely refused to let me go out. The Emperor had no choice but to confine him for a month. Of course, I was unaware of these secrets at the time. It wasn't until several years later that he finally told me the details. I simplified the matter, omitting the blush-inducing details, and gave His Majesty the gist of it. The Emperor nodded. If the hunt is as you described, I shall release Tang Yufeng. Thank you, Your Majesty. I told Jiang Yihan I'd only be gone for a little while. But the Emperor had too many questions, and by the time I finished answering and came out, it was already dark. Crown Prince Xiao Lin was chatting idly with Jiang Yihan on the first floor. Xiao Lin was holding the jade pendant I had given Jiang Yihan. He caressed it carefully, unable to put it down. In his past life, he had adored this jade pendant to death. Not only did he flaunt it in front of me, but he also insisted I weave a silk cord for him so he could carry it with him. When I finished the cord and gave it to him, he fell silent for a long time. The words of disdain lingered on his lips several times, but seeing how eagerly I was looking at him, he ultimately swallowed them down, transforming them into a sigh. Ah, Crown Princess, I knew he must have wanted to say my taste was lacking, that the pairing was hideous. Even so, this jade pendant had accompanied him for 5 years, until 5 years later, when it was shattered by the young 7th prince. He immediately turned hostile, frightening the 7th prince into tears. He hesitated and said, I am quite fond of this jade pendant. Might Yihan part with it? Jiang Yihan's expression changed slightly. He replied awkwardly, this was a gift from younger sister Li. I beg your pardon, but I cannot part with it. My heart warmed. Xiao Lin held the jade pendant with a complicated gaze. I walked straight over and plucked it from his palm, apologizing. This is a token of love I gave to my fiancé. Please forgive me, Your Highness. I handed the jade pendant to Jiang Yihan. Brother Yihan, keep it safe. Jiang Yihan was overjoyed. Xiao Lin, having failed to obtain the jade pendant he had longed for, felt dejected throughout the journey. The benevolent ruler could no longer keep up the pretense, and the tyrant's aura began to show its first signs. I asked him why he had been following us all this time. He said coldly, is this street owned by your Li family? Am I not allowed to come? This behavior of his perfectly matches my impression of Xiao Lin. It felt like a monster that could no longer maintain its disguise, revealing its true form. At this thought, I burst into laughter. Xiao Lin shot me a resentful look. I ignored him and went ahead to admire the lanterns by myself. Jiang Yihan, mindful of his status as the crown prince, forced a smile despite his displeasure. As dusk deepened, lanterns on the lake boats gradually lit up. Every pleasure boat's lanterns were uniquely designed, crafted into various shapes, vying to outshine one another in splendor. I was utterly mesmerized by the sight. In my previous life after marriage, I never had the chance to enjoy the lantern festival, missing out on so much excitement. I ran up to one painted boat after another, watching young talents solve lantern riddles. Seeing my delight, Jiang Yihan quietly asked, shall I call one over for us to board and tour the lake? I cheered, wonderful. Jiang Yihan went to prepare, leaving me to wait first. The painted boat before me was luxurious and grand, with a golden hairpin as the prize, but the lantern riddle was quite challenging. Green feathers cool and clear, with phoenix climbs mountains sheer, whose cry disrupts zither's cheer, flying southeast disappears. Guess a type of bird. I glanced at Xiao Lin. who had remained silent all this while, and taunted him. "Your Highness has been pondering for so long, have you figured it out yet?" Xiao Lin retorted. "What if I have?" I pointed at the golden hairpin. "Then claim your prize." Though it might be worthless to Xiao Lin, a prize is still a prize after all. Xiao Lin pondered and said, "I'll tell you the answer, you go and say it, and you can take the prize." I looked at him suspiciously. "Giving the prize to me," he said. "But you must also agree to one condition of mine." "What?" He gazed at me quietly. "Accompany me for a boat ride on the lake." I hesitated for a moment before reaching out to him. The answer. Xiao Lian flicked open his fan and whispered into my ear. The warmth of his breath rushed into my ear canal. I rubbed my ear and walked up to the host, announcing the answer. "Peacock, congratulations." The master handed me the golden hairpin. I couldn't believe it. Was it really the right answer? I turned to look at Xiao Lin, who raised an eyebrow and smiled. Soon his men brought an even more magnificent painted boat. Xiao Lin boarded first and reached out his hand to me. Just then, Jiang Yihan happened to arrive. A thought struck me. Perfect timing. His Highness the Crown Prince has invited us to enjoy the lake together. Jiang Yihan was surprised. But I have matters over there. Cancel them," avoiding Xiao Lin's outstretched hand. I lifted my skirt and stepped onto the boat in one swift motion, then tugged at Jiang Yihan's sleeve. "His Highness is saving you money, hurry up and come aboard." Xiao Lin suffered a silent loss, yet he didn't get angry, because his boat was splendid and eye-catching. Several nobles wanted to join the excursion. To show his generosity, Xiao Lin invited them all, including a few familiar faces. Kui Yi and her husband from her past life, Lu Kai. Kui Yi and her brother came out to play. Just in time to meet Lu Kai, the heir of Chengyang Prince. The three of them searched for a painted boat together. Upon hearing that the Crown Prince was there, they unceremoniously sent in their names to request an audience. Kui Yi's brother was the Crown Prince's study companion. Not to mention Xiao Lin had long been fond of Kui Yi, so permission was naturally granted. I was somewhat curious about Lu Kai, who kept fawning over Kui Yi from behind, and couldn't help but observe him closely. By all accounts, with his noble status and handsome appearance, he and Kui Yi were a perfect match. How could their life together have turned out so wretched? It's said that less than half a year after the emperor arranged their marriage, this ruthless young master began beating and kicking Kui Yi. Yet the Prince of Chengyang was a founding hero, a hereditary prince of different surname, and Lu Kai's father had been the emperor's childhood playmate, with the emperor's special favor. The Kui family could do nothing about it. I once asked Xiao Lin how he felt about his beloved being mistreated. He shook his head helplessly. The emperor arranged this marriage, what could I possibly do? While the emperor lived, he was powerless to save his beloved. The moment the emperor passed, he immediately detained the Prince of Chengyang's entire family in the capital. Perhaps it was an indirect way to protect Kui Yi. Perhaps I stared for too long. As Lu Kai glanced over and said displeasedly, "That young lady, why are you staring at me?" As soon as he spoke, Xiao Lin, Jiang Yihan, and Kui Yi all turned to look at me. I smiled and said, "I heard from my elder brother that the young master possesses extraordinary strength, having once single-handedly slain a ferocious tiger. Out of curiosity, I couldn't help but take a few extra glances." Lu Kai, hearing my praise, looked pleased with himself. Kui Yi shot me a glance. She turned to Lu Kai and asked, "Is it true?" Lu Kai said solemnly, "Of course." He replied with grievance, "I didn't tell Miss Kui because I was afraid she'd look down on me for being uncouth." Kui Yi smiled sweetly. "How could that be? A deeply admires brave warriors." Her attitude toward Lu Kai softened, and she invited him to solve lantern riddles together. The lantern riddles had been set up long before, with rows of lanterns hanging at the bow of the ship. Xiao Ling ordered some additional prizes to be added for everyone's amusement. I bowed apologetically and said, "I'm not well versed enough to participate. I'll keep you company." Jiang Yihan approached, noticing my hands tucked away, and asked, "Are you cold?" I shook my head, feeling several scorching gazes fixed upon me, making me quite uncomfortable. Kui Yi called out from not far away, "Isn't young Master Jiang coming either? With just the few of us, how dull it would be." Jiang Yihan wanted to refuse, but I persuaded him, "Go and join the fun. Though I can't participate, I'd still like to win a prize." Pointing at a charmingly naive golden cheline, I said, "I want that one. Brother Jiang, could you win it for me?" Jiang Yihan couldn't stand me calling him brother, his ear tips turning red as he struggled to suppress a smile. "All right." He strode over with broad steps, clearly confident of success. The bow of the boat was exceptionally noisy. So I turned and went to the quieter second floor. The pleasure boat was exquisite, with carved railings and painted beams. neon reflections, dazzling with flowing colors. Gazing at the distant shore, I heard laughter and merriment, thinking to myself that in my 2 lifetimes, when had I ever witnessed such prosperity? Just as I was lost in thought, suddenly a weight settled on my shoulders, a thick black feathered brocade cloak draped over me. A hand warmer was passed to me. Following the hand warmer upward, one could see Xiao Lin's somewhat pale complexion. I curled my lips. Your Highness seems to need these more than I do. With that, I pulled off my cloak and tossed it into Xiao Lin's arms. He didn't insist, shaking his head slightly before standing shoulder to shoulder with me. From the 2nd floor corridor, one could clearly see the crowd engaged in poetry duels at the ship's bow on the 1st deck. Each of them had their own strengths. Their wit and quick thinking nearly matched, but when it came to genuine poetic talent, Kui still stood out as superior. In my past life, I had little interaction with her and assumed she was an aloof woman for refusing to become the Crown Prince's concubine. But now, seeing her laugh so hard she bends at the waist, leaning into Lu Kai's embrace, I realize I was wrong. She's the kind of woman who wants every man to fall at her feet. I heard Xiao Lin has known her since childhood. They were childhood sweethearts. In my past life, if I hadn't interfered, they would have been a perfect match, a talented scholar and a beautiful maiden, a union made in heaven. I suddenly spoke up. If your Highness is truly sincere, why not propose to Miss Kui as soon as possible? This way, Kui could avoid a lifetime of suffering. Xiao Ling. You want me to marry Kui Yi? He followed my gaze with a glance and said indifferently, but my marriage has never been my own decision. I smiled helplessly. Who isn't? But at least men have court politics to occupy them, and they can take concubines. We women are confined to a small courtyard, forced to endure day after day with a man who despises and ridicules us. For a moment, they all fell silent, with nothing left to say. Suddenly, I spotted a larger, more magnificent boat approaching. Its silk strings playing sweet melodies and its dancers swaying gracefully. When I finally recognized the noble guest at the bow, I turned to Xiao Lin and said, Your Highness, your trouble has arrived. Prince Xiao Wei of Qi, Xiao Lin's most hated person. His mother was Consort Li, who enjoyed great imperial favor. When Xiao Lin was crown prince, the two of them fiercely competed for the throne. Xiao Lin became emperor. Yet the Prince of Qi still relied on his maternal clan's powerful influence to obstruct him at every turn. Xiao Lin once said to me through gritted teeth, One day, I will kill him. Unfortunately, I died too soon. Before my death, that mother-son pair was still jumping around merrily. In no time, Prince Qi's boat had drawn near, and the two vessels were lashed together. Prince Qi was wrapped in a silver fox fur cloak, adorned with a golden crown and jade pendants. His purple python brocade robe exuding opulence. Xiao Lin sneered, Second brother's boat is quite extravagant. Unfazed by the sarcasm, Prince Qi noticed me standing behind Xiao Lin and suddenly raised his eyebrows. Is this the beauty for whom my royal brother risked his life? I was quite surprised. When did Prince Qi come to recognize me? In our past lives, we had an uncle-sister-in-law relationship. He was the crown prince's sworn enemy. As the crown princess, I had always kept my distance from him. Only during palace banquets on festive occasions would we exchange polite greetings. I curtsied in salute. Xiao Ling raised his hand. He mocked with words. Even strangers observe propriety. How could my own younger brother be so insolent? This was deliberately finding fault with Prince Qi for not paying his respects. Prince Qi, inexplicably being picked on, curled his lips in displeasure, yet he had no choice but to bow and salute. Your younger brother greets his imperial majesty. He made Prince Qi remain in that bowing posture for quite a while. No, thank you. Kui greeted him with a smile. Prince Qi, what brings you here? Prince Qi smiled faintly and said, seeing how lively my royal brother's boat is, I couldn't resist the itch to come take a look. He asked, are you solving lantern riddles? Kui nodded, indeed. Would your highness care to join us in guessing? Prince Qi glanced at the prizes before Kui and smiled. This prince cannot compare to you all. Producing a jade flute from somewhere, he added, but I'd be happy to contribute to the fun. Let's play pitchpot instead. Then he turned to Xiao Lin, elder brother, won't you add some prizes for everyone? Xiao Lin took out a jade pendant from his sleeve. The Prince of Qi was surprised and laughed. This was bestowed by Her Majesty the Empress, meant for the future crown princess. Brother, are you really willing to part with it? I took a look. I hadn't seen this jade pendant before. Her Majesty the Queen's gifts were usually carefully preserved by him and placed on high shelves. Was Xiao Lin taking this opportunity to present it to Kui Yi? Xiao Lin said indifferently, just a jade pendant. They called for servants to prepare the arrow-throwing game equipment. Because of Prince Chi's remark, all the young gentlemen present tactfully missed their shots on purpose. Kui Yi fixed her gaze on that jade pendant, determined to claim it. When it was my turn, I had no skill to begin with, not a single one of my 10 arrows hit the mark. I excused myself to freshen up and made my way to the stern of the boat. It was relatively quiet here, away from the hustle and bustle. After sitting for a while and preparing to leave, I suddenly heard a familiar voice, Imperial sister-in-law. I froze. I stood frozen for a moment before finally turning around, forcing a smile. Your Highness, Prince Chi. I looked around. Was it you who just spoke to me? Prince Chi's gaze was dark and penetrating as he stared straight at me. Indeed it was. After a long pause, the corner of his lips curled up. Imperial sister-in-law. My heart suddenly sank. 1,000 thoughts flashed through my mind. But before I could speak, I heard him tease. I thought it was you that His Highness fancied. Look at this. He still prefers Miss Kui. TSK. Wrong again, I cautiously asked him. What does your Highness mean? Prince Chi clasped his hands behind his back and shook his head. I said, since my elder brother risked his life to save you, I mistakenly thought he was deeply in love with you, called it too soon. Turns out he gave the jade pendant to Miss Kui. I breathed a sigh of relief. Damn that Xiao Wei. Taking such deep breaths scared me half to death. I cursed him 1,000 times in my heart, but dared not show it on my face, only saying, the Crown Prince has always favored Miss Kui. Saving me was just a twist of fate. Is that so? This prince still doesn't believe it. Prince Chi walked toward me. The passage was only 2 feet wide, barely enough for one person to pass through, and became somewhat cramped when 2 people tried. I watched him warily. He stood barely half a foot away from me, lifting my chin with his fingers. Out of nowhere, he remarked, not exactly a stunning beauty, so how did you become so favored? Then he lowered his voice, looking at me with amusement. Tell me, if you fell into this icy lake, what would the Crown Prince do? I stared at him in shock. Just then, someone called out, Li Xiyin. As I turned around, my elbow bumped into Prince Chi, who was caught completely off guard and tumbled into the lake. I was shocked and hurriedly shouted, quick, someone come. Prince Chi has fallen into the water. The servants were thrown into chaos. The one who called out to me from the corridor was Jiang Yihan. Xiao Lin stood behind him, watching everything unfold with a meaningful gaze. Are you all right? Jiang Yihan rushed over nervously, grabbing my wrist tightly. I shook my head. I'm fine. But Prince Chi lost his footing and fell into the water. Servants had already jumped in to rescue him. The prince's heavy robes made it impossible to swim, causing him to flail like a struggling duck. Help! Glug glug, save me! Jiang Yihan pulled me to safety. A crowd had gathered at the bow of the ship, all watching the servants rescue the Prince of Qi. They were frantic with worry, shouting useless instructions. Xiao Lin, however, remained perfectly composed. After great effort, the Prince of Qi was finally hauled aboard. Coughing up water, he cursed furiously. Li Xiyin, how dare you try to kill me? With a face full of terror, I exclaimed. Your Highness lost your footing on your own. How can you blame me? It was you. Cough. You pushed me. He coughed so violently he could barely catch his breath, his words broken and incomplete. Kui Yi questioned. Your Highness isn't drunk. How could you have lost your balance? I said. Since His Highness wasn't drunk, how could I possibly push a grown man? Besides, both the Crown Prince and Lord Jiang witnessed it. I didn't push anyone. Kui Yi scoffed. Jiang Yihan is your fiancé. Of course he'd defend you. Xiao Ling pressed a fist to his lips and coughed lightly. This prince also saw it. It had nothing to do with Miss Li. Kui Yi had been publicly contradicted, and for a moment, his face darkened with humiliation. Her anger, stifled by Xiao Lin, found no outlet. So she began hurling random accusations. Li Xiyin, you're really something. First, the Crown Prince gets injured for you, and now Prince Qi falls into the water because of you. Are you some kind of jinx? Wherever you go, disaster follows. If it were the Li Xiyin of her past life, she would have been deeply wronged and insisted on arguing right from wrong. But having witnessed too many palace intrigues between the Empress and Consort Li in her previous life, experience told her that in the face of baseless accusations, staying silent would naturally bring someone forward to mediate. I lowered my head, biting my lip, holding my breath in silence, seeing Kui Yi's reaction. She became even more aggressive. Why so silent now? Weren't you so quick with your words? If it's not you, then speak up clearly. Who are you putting on this act for? A cold voice sharply interrupted. Kui Yi, Miss Kui. The two voices rang out almost simultaneously. Jiang Yihan stood before me and said angrily, Miss Kui, Miss Li is an upright person. If she says she didn't do it, Then she didn't. How can you humiliate her like this? She is my future wife. The debt of gratitude she owes His Highness the Crown Prince for saving her life will be repaid by me with all my might in the future. I ask you to stop being so aggressive." With that, he took my arm and said, "Let's go." He led me away. I looked at his stern, angry expression and felt warmth in my heart. Kui Yi's words didn't actually hurt me in the slightest. So what if I was the one who pushed Prince Qi? So what if the Crown Prince got injured because of me? What does she expect? That a few words from a little girl like her would make me heartbroken and reduced to tears. I've long passed the age of caring about what others think, yet Jiang Yihan's actions today have somewhat soothed my heart. A person willing to publicly stand up for you before others, willing to repay kindness on your behalf. Marrying him might not be such a bad choice after all. I reassured him. Don't worry, I didn't take it to heart. Jiang Yihan raised his hand to embrace me and solemnly promised. "Sean, don't worry, after marrying me, no one will ever bully you." After the Lantern Festival boat excursion, both the Crown Prince and the Prince of Qi fell ill simultaneously. One suffered a relapse of an old injury, vomiting blood that very night. The other caught a severe chill and was bedridden for a month. When my father heard that Prince Qi's fall into the water was related to me, his palm nearly landed on my face. "Li Sean, you'd better get married and get out of here as soon as possible." He was terrified that something might happen to the two princes, so he visited them every day. Seeing how worried he was, I sought out the eccentric old Dr. Shu, who had treated me in my previous life. In my previous life, I was struck by a sword in my lower abdomen and was beyond saving. My father had even given up on treating me. It was all thanks to my maid, Xiao Huan, who had served me since childhood. Xiao Huan had survived a serious illness when she was young, cured by none other than the eccentric old Shu. Old Shu was a peculiar man who treated the poor in alleyways, and he was usually impossible to find. Xiao Huan had to run a long way to find him, and even had to trick him by saying my illness was a rare condition before he finally agreed to come take a look. Old man Shu was exceptionally skilled in medicine and bold with his prescriptions. He said we lacked rare medicinal ingredients, which were likely only found in the mansions of high-ranking officials. My father had a sudden idea and immediately went to the palace to plead his case, seizing the opportunity to ask the emperor for the medicine. When I recovered back then, old man Shu said to my mother, "Miss Li has injured her lower abdomen and may have difficulty conceiving. But it's all right, let her recuperate for a few years. Once she's fully recovered, this old man will prescribe a strong dose of medicine. There's still a chance she could conceive." At that time, my father was planning to marry me off to the Crown Prince, so naturally my mother didn't dare speak of this. This was precisely why, after 7 years as Crown Princess without bearing a child, the Empress forced me to drink countless fertility potions. I brought old man Shu to the hunting grounds. Xiao Lin's face was pale as he quietly allowed his pulse to be taken, casually asking, "Has the old gentleman examined Prince Qi yet?" Old Shu replied, "I'll go after seeing you." Old Shu examined the wound on Xiao Lin's chest, scrutinizing it carefully before swiftly writing a prescription. In my opinion, the imperial physician's treatment wasn't far off. They're just too cautious. If they'd used stronger medicine and the Crown Prince had been in better spirits, this wouldn't have dragged on till now. Better spirits? Is Xiao Lin in a bad mood? Well, who wouldn't be? Having to constantly guard against a father and brothers with 800 schemes up their sleeves every day, Xiao Lin suddenly asked, "Old sir, what do you think of Miss Li's physical condition?" Old Shu took a moment to glance at me. "She's perfectly healthy, with a rosy complexion and abundant vitality. She could easily bear 8 or 10 children without any trouble." Xiao Lin fell into thoughtful silence. "Me, is this how you comment on an unmarried maiden?" He had someone lead old man Shu to meet Prince Qi, but deliberately kept me behind. Xiao Ling called out to stop me. "Stay away from Xiao Wei." I knew Prince Qi was his sworn enemy. He didn't like others getting close to Prince Qi. If possible, I wouldn't want to be associated with Prince Qi either. He appears all smiles on the surface, but is full of wicked schemes inside. But my father is afraid. You see, I must at least keep up appearances until I'm married off. Once I marry Jiang Yihan, my father won't be able to control me anymore. After some thought, I replied, "Your Highness should worry about yourself first. In this life, neither he nor Kui Yi has married yet. Who knows what storms may arise?" Xiao Ling paused. "What, am I in danger?" I extended my hand, counting on my fingers. Distracted by beauty," Xiao Ling scoffed. "Preposterous, absurd. I'm baffled, unclear about your own self-awareness. You may not have many women, but your desires are terrifyingly strong. In a single month, excluding those special days, You pester me for at least 12 days. Is this not called indulging in beauty? Oh, perhaps I am not a beauty. I couldn't be bothered to argue with him. Believe it or not, as you wish. I stood up and left. Old Shu the eccentric returned from Prince Chi's place when suddenly the emperor summoned him. A young eunuch attendant came to inform me that the emperor wished to see me. Having heard of Old Shu the eccentric's extraordinary medical skills, the emperor summoned him for consultation. When I arrived, old Monster Shu was frowning in deep thought. The emperor asked him, "How many more years do I have to live?" Old Monster Shu replied, "Hard to say, at most 10 years, at least 5. The eunuch beside them was shocked and angrily rebuked. "Silence, you quack, how dare you spout such nonsense?" Old Monster Shu showed no fear. "Your Majesty's cold poison has penetrated the organs. If this humble one can cure it, your life may be extended, but if the cold ailment seeps into the bones, the outcome becomes uncertain." I was shocked. This old Monster Shu truly has some skills up his sleeve. In the previous life, the emperor had succumbed to a severe cold and passed away abruptly. Before his death, the bond between the Crown Prince and Prince Chi had already shattered. With them fighting to the death, in the end, Xiao Ling proved more cunning and ascended the throne smoothly. The emperor waved his hand to dismiss him. After a moment, the emperor turned to me and smiled. "You see, even if you don't speak, I can still learn from others." My heart was a tumult of mixed emotions. How should I put it? On the day of the emperor's passing in my previous life, I had even gone to the palace to pay my respects. He briefly regained consciousness and, seeing me kneeling by the bed, asked with concern, "Did you quarrel with the Crown Prince again?" I replied no. He sighed and said, "Linger, it's all my fault for not teaching you properly." At that time, father and son were suspicious of each other. I sensed the emperor seemed eager to have a heart-to-heart with his son, so I returned to the Eastern Palace to advise Xiao Lin. "His Majesty misses you dearly. Go see him." Xiao Lin then entered the palace, and that very night, the emperor passed away. As Xiao Lin was present before the throne, he immediately sealed off the Qi prince's residence and summoned the ministers for an audience. By the time the Qi prince learned of the news, it was already too late. I earnestly advised, "Let physician Shu put in more effort. The emperor's prolonged prosperity would be a blessing for the realm. If the emperor lived a few more years, Xiao Lin wouldn't have to struggle so hard. Wouldn't be suffocated by the pressure from 3 powerful consort clans, causing unrest that made everyone in court and country live in fear." Hearing my words, the emperor nodded and said, "Very well, considering your filial devotion." He rewarded old Monster Shu with treasures and granted him an honorary position in the imperial hospital, allowing him to come and go freely. After completing all this, the emperor's tone suddenly changed. "You once said that someone intended to harm the Crown Prince during the hunt, yet nothing has happened. I had already prepared an explanation for this. In the dream, the Crown Prince hunted a deer, and your Majesty was overjoyed, distributing venison and deer blood wine to the nobles and ministers. Now that the Crown Prince did not participate in the hunt, there was no deer, no wine. Naturally, nothing happened." The emperor, "Oh, he ordered it to be brought forward. How fortunate. My Imperial Guard commander has shot a deer." I turned my head to look. The deer was enormous, with legs each as long as 10 feet. No wonder Xiao Lin had boasted of his prowess back then, so overjoyed that he let his guard down, allowing others to take advantage. But judging by this, he wasn't all that impressive after all. What he could accomplish, the Imperial Guard commander could achieve as well, perhaps in their past life. The Imperial Guard commander refrained from intervening out of consideration for the Crown Prince's dignity, giving him a chance to prove himself. The emperor continued, "What did you just say?" "We are overjoyed, distributing venison and bestowing deer blood wine." With a wave of his hand, he summoned the attendant. "Come, make it so." The attendant hesitated, cautiously asking, "Your Highness the Crown Prince and Prince Chi, are they permitted to drink wine? Both of them are in poor health." The emperor gave him a cold glance, and he immediately lowered his head and hurried off to handle the matter. I didn't say a word. After all, they're the emperor's sons. If even the emperor doesn't care, why should I, an outsider who holds grudges against both of them, say anything unnecessary? The emperor also bestowed upon me a piece of meat and a cup of wine. I brought them back, intending to give them to my brother who patrols the outer perimeter of the temporary palace. His abilities are lacking. He couldn't even qualify for the Imperial Guards, so he likely received no rewards. This venison and wine might help him gain some respect among his peers. My brother was utterly astonished to receive the wine and meat, and wanted to share it with his colleagues. After delivering it, I prepared to return to the inner palace where the women resided. My brother wanted to escort me back, but his superiors forbade it, fearing he might break protocol and offend the noble ladies. Not wanting to cause him trouble, I said, "It's fine, it's just a short walk," but I never expected that in those few steps, disaster would strike. Someone threw a sack over my head, knocked me out, and dumped me in the wild woods. I tried to recall, but the pain in the back of my neck was too intense, I couldn't remember a thing. The cold wind howled, gnarled branches thrashed wildly, and now and then an owl screeched. Who the hell did this? Dumping me in this wilderness in the dead of night, how is that any different from killing me? What, do you want me to become food for wild beasts? Even with a bright moon overhead, the thick brambles made the path impossible to see. After searching for a long time, I noticed trampled marks in the thorny thickets and followed them step by step to find my way out, having lived 2 lifetimes. I've never encountered such a situation before. Though it was early spring, the night wind remained bitterly cold. My thin clothing offered no protection as the piercing chill seeped into my bones. Wolf howls sounded in the distance, soon multiplying into a chorus. Some seemed frighteningly close, making cold sweat break out across my back. I ran desperately until my legs grew numb and leaden. The rustling in the grass told me something was following me. My heart sank with despair. Was I truly destined to die in the jaws of wolves tonight? No, I had barely escaped, glimpsing the promise of a new life. I wasn't ready to go yet. I wanted to stay with my mother and sister, to have a warm home, to live well. The rustling behind me grew louder, accompanied by heavy panting, undoubtedly a wild beast, biding its time until my strength gave out. I dared not stop to rest, dragging my heavy legs forward, when suddenly I heard the sound of hoofbeats. Someone was shouting, "Lee Seen, Miss Lee." Overwhelmed with joy, I cried out, "I'm here," but my strength was exhausted, my voice hoarse and faint. In the distance, there were flickering flames, and the glowing green eyes behind me seemed unwilling to give up. Pressing closer, frantic, I raised my voice and shouted, "Help, I'm here." The flames drew nearer, and the lone wolf suddenly lunged forward, biting fiercely. Whoosh, whoosh, 2 piercing arrows pinned the charging wolves to the ground. Several armored imperial guards held torches aloft, led by none other than Xiao Lin. He dismounted and rushed toward me urgently. Seeing, my legs gave way, and darkness swallowed my vision. I had a very long dream. In the dream, I was still the crown princess, because I voluntarily requested to abdicate. Xiao Lin was caned by the emperor. Upon returning, Xiao Lin placed me under house arrest, forbidding me to leave my chamber. The people in the Eastern Palace are all snobs, and the meals they serve have become increasingly unpalatable. My mouth was craving flavor, so I discussed making a copper hot pot with Xiao Huan. Xiao Huan didn't know how to light the charcoal and nearly set the bedchamber on fire. Amid the swirling smoke, Xiao Lin happened to walk in, covering his nose in disgust, and sneered, "How thoughtful of you to go to such lengths just to lure me here. I don't understand why, after keeping me locked up for half a month, I can't even have hot pot." Xiao Lin, breaking all precedent, sat down to eat this kind of food with me, which shocked me greatly. He's always been so fastidious, needing everything prepared and served to him. After dipping a few vegetables, he lost patience and demanded I serve him. When I picked cabbage for him, he was displeased. When I gave him a piece of meat, he got angry again, sarcastically praising my good eyesight for finding a piece of meat the size of a fingernail. After that incident, our relationship eased, and he started coming to have hot pot with me every now and then. On my birthday, he arrived empty-handed, but upon seeing the congratulatory gifts from others, his conscience suddenly pricked him, and he said he wanted to give me a present. He took me to the peach tree in the backyard of the Eastern Palace and dug up several jars of wine. He said it was peach blossom wine he had brewed himself when he was 15, extremely precious, and he wished to share it with me. The fragrance of peach blossoms intoxicated my senses, making me forget my notoriously low alcohol tolerance as I took a small sip. That single cup was all it took for Xiao Lin to witness my drunken state. He found it utterly amusing, and the next day he deliberately tempted me with pear blossom wine. He somehow collected all manner of fruit-infused liquors to coax me into tasting, until one day, the tables turned and he fell victim himself. He caressed my cheek and murmured, "Seeing, this wine is quite intoxicating." A jar of wine went to our heads, and in our drunken stupor, we shared a night of passion. He no longer mentioned Kui Yi, and for a brief time, we became an affectionate couple deeply in love. But the good times didn't last. After more than a year of marriage in the Eastern Palace without conceiving, the emperor and empress grew displeased and bestowed 3 concubines upon the crown prince. Those concubines, each one more troublesome than the last. They mocked me as a barren hen, saying I hogged the crown prince yet couldn't bear him a legitimate heir. The Eastern Palace was in constant uproar, never at peace. The Empress, having heard someone's complaint, summoned me to the palace to reprimand me. She scolded me for being jealous and punished me by making me copy the admonitions for women. My newly kindled hopes for love were thus extinguished. Which noble household's mistress hasn't gone through this? Being born into a great family doesn't guarantee a lifetime of monogamy, let alone in the imperial household. Compared to so-called favor, I care more about my own head and the glory of my family. I began arranging concubines to serve in the bedchamber, which enraged Xiao Lin. Was he ever one to be ordered around? From the start, he was wary of even me, the crown princess. He smashed many things in my bedchamber and refused to speak to me for several months in his rage. Within 2 years, those concubines either died or left, one after another. With the concubines gone, Xiao Lin pestered me again to bear him a child. He angrily demanded, "You occupy the position of my crown princess, why won't you give me a legitimate heir?" At the time, I didn't yet know I had fertility issues. After years of failing to conceive and enduring relentless reprimands from the Empress, all I wanted was to survive. I cried and said, "Go find a concubine to bear your child, you can even bring the baby to me to raise afterward." Xiao Lin refused. "I only want a legitimate heir born from you." Xiao Lin's own birth mother had passed away early, and he was raised under the Empress's care. He was fixated on having a legitimate eldest son. During my years as the crown princess, apart from worrying daily about how to deal with the Empress, my greatest vexation was Xiao Lin. Later, the concubines bestowed by the Empress were dismissed by him, and the ones gifted by consort Li were killed by his hand. He publicly declared, "The crown prince and his consort are deeply devoted, we tolerate no outsiders." Yet it was clearly his own fear of having spies planted around him that made me bear the reputation of jealousy. He also had moments of jealousy. I said my mother missed me and begged him to let her visit the palace, but he was always reluctant. He said, "You're just a concubine's daughter, not even born by your legal mother, why would she care about you?" The Empress had always been stern. Since he couldn't receive his legal mother's love himself, he resorted to slandering others like this. "I rarely get angry, I'm born of a concubine, and so are you. We're 6 of one and half a dozen of the other." Xiao Lin was seeing me talk back for the first time. His eyes widening in shock. After a long pause, he chuckled and pinned me beneath him. "Exactly, so we should produce a legitimate heir together." My mind was too fragmented with images, drifting in and out of sleep, my whole body warm and soft like baked dough. Someone is touching my face, their calloused fingertips brushing against my cheek. It tickles strangely. I reached out to push, and the person tactfully withdrew their hand. After a while, he suddenly leaned in and whispered in my ear, "Your birthday is coming up in a few days. What gift would you like?" I lifted my heavy eyelids. It was Xiao Lin. His outer robe remained untied, as if he had just returned from the palace. My head felt heavy, and I blurted out, "I want my mother to come to the palace to accompany me." Xiao Ling froze for a moment, then after a long pause, replied hoarsely, "All right." So easy to persuade. I was somewhat surprised, wanting to get a clearer look at whether the person before me was Xiao Lin. With a jade crown on his head and python robes, it was indeed the attire of the crown prince. The dark golden embroidered curtains cast dim shadows, strikingly similar to his bedchamber in the Eastern Palace. "It seems I'm still in a dream." He stared fixedly at me, his gaze blazing like torches. I sighed. This is precisely his flaw. He's always so calculating, making me fawn over him whenever I ask for anything. I reached up, hooked my arms around his neck, tilted my face, and planted a firm kiss on his lips. "Is this enough?" Xiao Lin froze. Suddenly, his expression turned fierce as he cupped my chin and kissed me savagely. "Not enough." His kiss was urgent and overwhelming, greedy as if he hadn't touched me in centuries. His teeth scraped against my lips, and I gasped in pain. "It hurts. Be gentler." Xiao Lin immediately let go. His breathing was unsteady, his cheeks flushed, his eyes deep and misty, as if I had wronged him. Sai Yin, he murmured my name, gently pressing his cheek against mine. This time, unusually gentle and obedient, I responded slowly. The heavy python robe was particularly cumbersome, my arms sore and numb, too weak to wrap around his neck. With eyes closed, I reached to undo his outer garment. He rarely declined, yet this time he held my hand against his chest, feigning resistance while his lips refused to part. I was suffocating with discomfort. Just then, a sudden cool breeze rushed in. "Your Highness the Crown Prince. We've caught the man." The newcomer was extremely reckless, charging all the way to the screen partition. Xiao Lin immediately released me, his wide sleeve unfurling to cover my face. He barked sharply, "Get out!" "Oh," the man responded sheepishly, his footsteps quickening as he left. Xiao Lin gathered his sleeve back, and light returned to my vision. "Rest well," he soothed softly. "No one will disturb you anymore." I was terribly sleepy, turning over to hug the quilt. "All right." He sat silently for a while, tucking in my blanket corners before leaving. After he left, the room fell into quietness, and I sank into deep, dreamless sleep. The next morning, I woke up in a side chamber of the Imperial Palace. The attending maid said, "Miss Li, you're awake. You must have been drunk last night. You ran alone into the wild forest." "I ran alone into the wild forest," the maid replied. "Indeed, if your elder brother hadn't grown worried and come to inquire. Even His Majesty wouldn't have known." I grew even more puzzled. "So it was my brother who begged His Majesty to send someone to find me?" The palace attendant replied, "Indeed, were it not for His Majesty, who else could mobilize the Imperial Guards? How could this be? Yet clearly someone had knocked me unconscious with a blow and abandoned me there. How could a frail woman like me have run so far? Not to mention that leaving the temporary palace would require passing through multiple layers of defense. Did your Majesty suppress this matter for the sake of my reputation?" The palace maid continued, "His Majesty sent Physician Shu to treat you. Physician Shu said you're not seriously injured and will recover after a few days of rest. His Majesty, pitying you for the fright you suffered, specifically ordered your elder brother to escort you home." She pointed at the bundle. "See. I've already packed your things for you." With the Emperor's decree spoken, I had no choice but to rise and return home. Just as I left the temporary palace, someone suddenly blocked my path. Li Xiyin, Prince Qi, stood before me, dismissing his attendants. I curtsied in greeting. "Your Highness, Prince Qi." He sidestepped with a light chuckle. "I dare not accept such courtesy from my royal sister-in-law." My brow twitched as I forced a smile. "Your Highness mocks me again." Mockery. Prince Qi slowly closed the distance between us. Would the teenage Li Xiyin have dared push me into the lake? Uncertain whether he was probing or truly knew something, I stepped around him and left. He said coldly behind me, "Are you sure you don't want to know the real cause of your death?" I followed him to a secluded spot. I asked, "What does your Highness know?" He said leisurely, "This prince knows everything." He tapped his palm with a fan. "In your past life, you were the crown princess, became an empress, and had a child. Unfortunately, Xiao Lin killed it." My gaze shot toward him with venom. "I have a wound that cannot be uncovered. That is my child." After becoming empress, not only did the Empress Dowager and Xiao Lin urge me to bear children, but even the court officials began to chatter incessantly. In their memorials, they would invariably speak of the nation's destiny when opening their mouths, and of the crown prince when closing them. They urged Xiao Lin to expand his harem and hold a new selection of concubines. Xiao Lin refused, citing that his mourning period was not yet over. Consequently, people began approaching me one after another, persuading me to help the emperor select concubines and push their daughters into the palace. I couldn't sleep night after night, and every morning I opened my eyes to countless voices of condemnation. My mother came to the palace to visit me, bringing a prescription with her. She said old Shu the eccentric had already died, and this prescription was written by his apprentice. His apprentice isn't as skilled as he was. This potent medicine might harm the body. I have no other choice. After taking the potent medicine, I rarely took the initiative to seek out Xiao Lin. Drink until thoroughly drunk. Before long, I became pregnant. I took every precaution, yet still failed to prevent it. At 4 months, the child was lost. Xiao Lin flew into a rage, severely punishing the former emperor's retainers and executing many palace servants. This palace turmoil saw him suppress the Empress Dowager's clan, place consort Li under house arrest, forbid Prince Qi from entering the palace for visits, and thoroughly purge the imperial harem. This move caused an uproar in both court and public, sparking endless discussions. At that time, Prince Qi was furious and rushed into the palace to tell me Xiao Lin's actions were merely using the child in my womb as a political pawn. He allowed the Empress Dowager to torment me and kill this child, all to suppress the influence of my maternal relatives. I snapped out of my memories and sneered, "Didn't you and your son have a hand in this too?" While the Empress Dowager bore the primary blame for the loss of the child. But was Xiao Lin's punishment of consort Li so severe because she didn't intervene? It's beyond my control. But that doesn't mean I'm completely unaware. Prince Qi froze for a moment. He didn't answer, quickly turning his head away. "In any case, your death was suspicious. If you trust me, we can join forces." My death was suspicious. What do you mean by that? I remember being constantly ill after losing the child. when my mother brought my younger sister to the palace to visit me. They were scolded by Xiao Lin again, then he proceeded to disparage my father and brothers. I begged him to spare them, but he refused. Indeed, if he could suppress even his own mother's clan, the Empress's maternal family, how much less would he care about his wife's kin? Only then did I realize the man sharing my bed was a complete monster devoid of warmth. Gradually, I lost all hope, my vitality draining away with each passing day. He finally died of depression. Isn't this exactly how I died? Could I have been framed? Prince Qi shook his head. After your death, I investigated and found you didn't die from illness, but from poison, so I suspect it was Xiao Lin who poisoned you. I shook my head with a bitter laugh. He didn't kill me when I was crown princess, but waited until I was already dying of illness. That excuse is too flimsy, King Qi said firmly. What if he wants to marry Kui Yi? My smile froze. King Qi glanced at my bundle and said, Li Xiyin, you still don't know, do you? Last night, it was Lu Kai who abandoned you in the wild forest. Lu Kai, I bear no grudge against him, but on the Lantern Festival night, I offended Kui Yi, so, the danger I faced last night was Kui Yi trying to harm me. You're standing in someone's way, and naturally, they won't let you off. Prince Qi approached, extending his invitation once more. So, will you join forces with me? After all, I am the ultimate victor. I pondered his words carefully. So he was the ultimate victor. Which means Xiao Lin from the previous life had died by his hand. I didn't state it outright, only asking, why do you want to ally with me? In terms of family background, my Li family is in decline, and my father and brothers have limited prospects. They can't help you. Prince Qi shook his head gently. But you have his favor. He smiled faintly. Father is very fond of you. In your past life, wasn't it with your assistance that Xiao Lin seized the throne at the critical moment? So that was the reason. They thought I was someone who could sway the emperor's mind. I shook my head in refusal. But I am already betrothed to another in this lifetime and have no wish to enter the palace again. I cannot help you. I looked at him. I've already been an empress in my past life, and it was quite dull. Besides, since you're also reborn, you must know I can't bear children. How can a woman who can't conceive become an empress? The Prince of Qi was stunned. I curtsied in farewell. Goodbye. As I reached the corridor, I suddenly turned back. By the way, Your Highness Prince of Qi, do you know what will happen to Consort Li when she turns 50? I hope you'll take precautions in advance. Prince Qi frowned deeply. I'm certain. Prince Qi was not reborn. When I said I couldn't bear children, he hesitated. Yet he clearly knew my inability to conceive was due to that sword wound. This lifetime being unharmed, naturally things are different. When I mentioned Consort Li's 50th birthday would bring significant events, he looked bewildered and concerned. Had he been reborn, how could he not know that Consort Li's 50th birthday banquet would mark the most glorious moment for him and his mother? So the general experiences he knew must have been told to him by someone else. That reincarnated individual was someone else entirely, however. One of his remarks carried profound implications. He was utterly convinced he would be the ultimate victor. This suggests that, at least from the reincarnated person's perspective, Xiao Lin ultimately fell into the hands of the Qi King. This is rather peculiar. In my past life, when I died, Xiao Lin wasn't yet all-powerful in court, but he had already dealt quite thoroughly with Consort Li's maternal family. How could he have lost? I pondered this endlessly but couldn't make sense of it. Shaking my head in frustration, why should I worry about Xiao Lin anyway? Much in this life differs from my past one. All I need is to marry quietly and stay away from the imperial family. I left the temporary palace. My brother was waiting for me. He said someone had come to see me. I was puzzled. The visitor wore coarse linen, his face and hair slightly tidied, yet the scars on his face remained visible. He was terribly thin, with sunken cheeks, though his eyes were bright and piercing. It was Tang Yufeng. The emperor had kept his promise and released him. He looked at me, pressed his lips together, then turned to my brother. Young Master Li, might I have a private word with your sister? My brother said sternly. Of course not. You're the murderer who tried to kill my sister. When my brother refused, he didn't press further. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, in which year did your birth mother, Lady Qian, pass away, and where was she buried? I replied calmly. She died when I was 3 years old. She's buried in the Li family cemetery. He pondered silently for a moment before suddenly letting out a bitter smile. So she only lived for 5 years after leaving. He was thinking of his mother. She was my mother, and his mother too. Unable to bear it, I consoled him. From what my stepmother told me, she had a hard life, but her final years were better. She passed quickly from illness. My birth mother was very tolerant towards concubines. She wouldn't lie to me. Tang Yufeng nodded. After a moment of silence, he said, I'm sorry, I have my own difficulties. I understand. He was the only person Xiao Lin truly trusted, his most trusted confidant, so naturally he always had his master's best interests at heart. If the target was me, it wouldn't drag Xiao Lin into this, that would be the best outcome. After some thought, I said, go back and rest well to recover from your injuries. In a while, I'll take you to pay respects to my mother. He nodded. All right. After he left, my brother was utterly perplexed. Xin, you're a daughter of the Li family. Even if your mother had some entanglement with him, that's all in the past. You're a young lady about to be married, you can't possibly have such a relative. I smiled faintly. I know, brother is afraid I won't be close to you. But that won't happen. My brother became flustered. That's not what I meant at all. I didn't mean that. This brother of mine may not be particularly capable, but he's always been good to his siblings, so I've listened to him since childhood. He was afraid Tang Yufeng's background might become entangled with mine and invite gossip, which is why he kept advising against it. But he didn't know that my leniency toward Tang Yufeng wasn't solely due to blood ties. In my past life, Tang Yufeng was the first person who treated me kindly after I married into the Eastern Palace. During my first month as Crown Princess, no one in the Eastern Palace showed me the slightest respect. I had never managed a household before, let alone dealt with palace servants who were cunning as monkeys. My personal maid couldn't even fetch hot water for me. I requested an audience with the Crown Prince, but the servant said His Highness didn't wish to see me. In the dead of winter, I had run all that way, cold and aggrieved, until I could no longer hold back my tears. Hiding in a corner of the corridor, Tang Yufeng happened to pass by. He stood guard nearby, dismissing the attendants and letting me cry my fill before approaching. He handed me a handkerchief. If the Crown Princess has any matters in the future, you may come directly to this subordinate. He personally escorted me back, and later, after saying something unknown, the servants in the Eastern Palace became much more restrained. Later, when I was placed under house arrest by Xiao Lin, he would visit me every few days. Sometimes he'd bring pastries I loved, other times trendy treats from outside. Afraid I'd get bored, he even caught a kitten to bring over. As the kitten grew, it would pounce and nip at Xiao Lin's robe hem whenever he visited. When Xiao Lin tried to pet it, the kitten would dart far away. Furious, Xiao Lin pointed at it and cursed, "One day I'll throw you away for good." Yet the cat that Xiao Lin couldn't bear to part with was ultimately killed by one of his concubines. In the bitter winter month, it drowned in an icy lake. The palace has no tolerance for innocence and naivety. Even a cat cannot escape malicious schemes. In our final days, Xiao Lin and I never spoke again. The only person I was willing to see was Tang Yufeng. He came to see me more frequently than before, visiting me every day. As we chatted, I suddenly burst into tears. "Guard Tang, I really want to eat the pastries Xiao Huan used to make, but Xiao Huan is no longer here." Unable to bear my sorrow, he said, "I'll go to the Li residence to find the old chef. Surely someone there still knows how to make them." On the day I passed away, I ate the pastries he had brought me. The pastry tastes just like what I used to have at home, sweet and delightful. With my breath as faint as a wisp, I forced a smile. "Tang Yufeng, thank you for accompanying me this far. I must go now." Unable to bear it, he turned his head away. "Your Highness, don't speak such disheartening words. You'll get better." Will I get better? Of course, because I was finally free. The last person I saw was Tang Yufeng. In the 10-year loveless marriage between Xiao Lin and me, he was the only one who had always treated me well from beginning to end. So even though in this life he had no choice but to hurt me, I was still willing to forgive him. When I came to my senses, my brother was still nagging me to stay away from Tang Yufeng. "Did you hear what I told you?" I nodded. "I heard you." I hugged his arm and smiled ingratiatingly. "I'm still closest to you, brother. If you hadn't been worried and begged His Majesty to send someone to find me, I might not have made it back alive." My brother looked puzzled. "What are you talking about?" "I only found out this morning when someone notified me. Without an imperial decree, how could I possibly approach the emperor? Why would His Majesty agree to see a mere patrol guard like me?" Wasn't it my brother who begged the emperor to find someone? Then why did the palace maid packing my belongings say such things? Could it be Xiao Lin? But he couldn't mobilize the imperial guards either. I spent a few peaceful days at home. During this time, it was heard that Prince Qi had been reprimanded, and the emperor was very displeased with him. In the previous life, Prince Qi served as the whetstone for the crown prince, relying on his charming and carefree nature to win the old emperor's favor. Why is it that now, knowing the cause and effect, he has instead angered the emperor? Thinking about it this way, That so-called reincarnated person doesn't seem to have much insight into the inner workings of the palace either. But who could it possibly be? Before I could ponder it further, I was soon struck by a bolt from the blue. The Jiang family wanted to break off the engagement, without any reason at all. My father cursed me, saying I was stirring up trouble and bringing disgrace to the family. This time, even my mother didn't take my side. She coldly scolded me, telling me to go find Jiang Yihan and explain myself, to beg for his mercy. Perhaps there might still be a sliver of hope. My elder brother arranged for me to meet Jiang Yihan. He seemed much more subdued, his eyes devoid of light, and his gaze quickly averted whenever it met mine. Lord Jiang, could you tell me the reason? The man who had vowed to protect me during the Lantern Festival, why had he changed so quickly? Jiang Yihan forced a faint smile. No reason. My Jiang family is simply unworthy. I frowned. What kind of reason is that? I am merely the illegitimate daughter of the Vice Minister of Works, with no male heir in the family. The Jiang family held the prestigious rank of first-class marquis, with their younger generation flourishing in influence. Several had been appointed as captains, and some had even joined the Imperial Guards. Wait, the Imperial Guards? I asked suspiciously. Did your clansman say something? Jiang Yihan's eyes dimmed as he slowly raised his head, his voice hoarse as he asked, "Do you truly like the Crown Prince?" I froze. He let out a bitter laugh. Just as I thought, he turned his head, unwilling to look at me any longer. My cousin said that Miss Li went missing late at night, and the Crown Prince was so anxious he personally led the Imperial Guards to search for her. The Crown Prince carried Miss Li onto his horse, carried her into the house, and even was intimate with her, lovey-dovey. That night was not a dream. The guard who barged in was his cousin. Jiang Yihan mocked. And how would I dare to compete with the Crown Prince for someone? I quietly asked. Did young Master Jiang break off the engagement because the Crown Prince took a liking to me, or because I was too close with the Crown Prince? Jiang Yihan's eyes flickered with uncertainty. I nodded. I understand. I bowed to take my leave, but after only 2 steps, someone suddenly grabbed my arm. Li Xiyin, Jiang Yihan pleaded, cut ties with the Crown Prince, won't you? As long as you forget him, I'll marry you. I can accept that. I pried his fingers open one by one. Trust is like fine porcelain, once cracked, it can never be fully mended. He refused to let go, his voice bitter. Was all your kindness to me in the past just a lie? On the Lantern Festival, you even argued fiercely with the Crown Prince for my sake. You gave me that jade pendant. You defied convention to embrace and comfort me. Were those all lies too? Did you never care for me at all? I lowered my gaze. I naturally wanted to marry him. He was courteous and gentle with everyone. I longed to retreat into his small courtyard, to emulate my mother and become a virtuous, dignified matriarch. No need to overexert myself, nor to worry about survival or death. But his greatest virtue has now become the biggest wedge between us. He values propriety and upholds moral principles. Even if I promise never to see Xiao Lin again after marrying him, he would still hold a grudge. In the countless days to come, the mere thought of Xiao Lin having taken liberties with me would stick in his throat like a fishbone, giving him cause for grievance. A man's resentment does not fade with time. I had already experienced this situation in my past life. I kindly advised, young Master Jiang, there are countless virtuous women in this world, and surely one will suit you better than Xiyin. Since fate has not brought you together, it's best to let go. Jiang Yihan froze for a moment, then loosened his grip. His deeply ingrained sense of propriety forbade him from further debasing himself to beg an unloving heart to stay. I walked down the mountain without looking back. Failing to salvage the marriage arrangement, my father flew into a rage and struck me across the face. The blow sent stars dancing before my eyes, yet he showed not an ounce of pity, ordering me to be sent overnight to a mountain nunnery, to stay in the convent for the rest of my life without ever leaving. Perhaps it's for the best. The mountain temple was tranquil, with daily scripture recitations and prayers, no longer needing to constantly fear for my life. It was truly the best possible outcome. I brought nothing with me. Going alone to the nunnery, the elder nun asked me to bring out the damp scriptures to air and dry them, though it was just moving scriptures. I was still exhausted and panting, sitting on the large blue stone to rest. Suddenly, I noticed the surroundings had gone quiet. I quickly turned my head and realized the nuns who had been helping me dry the scriptures had all disappeared. A young man stood not far away. My father's slap left my face swollen, and even my vision became blurry. I squinted to make out the approaching figure, the Crown Prince. He frowned and walked over slowly. I opened a book and asked, "This is a nunnery, how did you get in?" He didn't answer but turned me to face him, his expression pained. What happened to your face? I turned my head away, flipping through the pages. I asked, aren't you attending court today? Today is a day off. I thought about it. Is it? Doesn't seem like it. I asked again. Is Tang Yufeng doing well? Much better. Have they caught the culprit who abandoned me in the wild forest? In the big prison. I glanced at him sideways. Today he answered every question, behaving so obediently it was almost unsettling. I stopped what I was doing and asked with amusement, what brings you here today? Today is your birthday. He paused, pulling out a small cloth bag filled with my favorite pastries and dried fruits. Came to see you. My eyelashes fluttered. I accepted it, then brought out several small teacups from the house. Thank you for your kindness. Your Highness, please have some tea. He sat down across from me. Taking a sip from the teacup, he immediately frowned. As a noble prince, of course he couldn't stomach the crude monastery tea. He set down the teacup and looked at me. I can plead your case to your father and let you go back. I shook my head. Why go back? He'll just find me irritating and beat me again. My father is the kind of man who's always scheming for advancement. I ruined his plans. He'll never show me a kind face again. Besides, if Xiao Lin went to plead for mercy, he might start scheming again, retracing the steps of his past life. I took a bite of pastry and said casually, it's quite nice here in the mountains, peaceful and quiet. Every day, all I have to do is chant scriptures, sun-dry the sutras. How relaxing, rather than scheming and fighting in the mortal world, ending up covered in wounds. It's better to wear coarse cloth and keep company with the ancient Buddha by the dim lamplight. Xiao Lin listened, gripping his teacup, and remained silent. I glanced at him and joked, Your Highness isn't speaking. Do you pity me for living this hard life? He looked up, hesitating to speak. An idea struck me, and I proposed, how about this? Your Highness funds the construction of a nunnery and lets me be the abbess. You can offer monthly incense donations and alms. That way, I'd live comfortably, and no one would dare bully me. Xiao Lin hadn't expected me to suggest this. He chuckled, You've got quite the imagination. If I were to make you an abbess, he tapped the table with his fingers, musing, could I secretly visit you by climbing over the wall at night? I widened my eyes and shook my hands repeatedly. That is absolutely not allowed. Your Highness is a man. Visiting a nunnery at night would surely ruin reputations. Xiao Ling sulked, giving a light snort. If that's the case, why should I spend any money at all? This little interruption lightened the mood considerably. We sat together in the simple thatched pavilion, gazing at the foot of the mountain. Blue stone slabs paved the path, a clear stream murmured, mist curled around the bridge, and mountain flowers bloomed in profusion. Behind us, the cool breeze rustled through the pages of scriptures, while before our eyes, the human world bustled with extraordinary liveliness. In my past life, I was forever confined within palace walls. Even at the most boisterous banquets, I remained perpetually on guard. Only when accompanying the royal procession could one occasionally catch glimpses of the bustling mortal world from within the carriage. I turned to look at Xiao Lin, who was still gazing into the distance. He rarely had such leisurely moments when he could let down his guard and stop considering others' thoughts. An inexplicable emotion compelled me to speak. Your Highness, in truth, His Majesty cares deeply for you. In his previous life, the old emperor had always cherished this son whom he personally raised, yet he was not only a father but also a sovereign. He could not show his affection or approval. He loved the crown prince, yet feared him as well, fearful that he would grow stronger and become a rival to himself, even more afraid that he harbored resentment. Showing no respect for his sovereign and father, thus, he could only protect the crown prince while simultaneously supporting Prince Qi. When the emperor summoned me to the palace to admire paintings, he often muttered to himself, rambling incessantly. He said I resemble the crown prince's birth mother, consort Hui, just as tender-hearted and kind, just as gentle and obedient, but he said I'm not clever, lacking consort Hui's quick wit. He also said he misses consort Hui deeply. Had she lived, she would have doted on the child, and the crown prince's temperament wouldn't have turned so cold and unyielding under his care. Back then, my mind was childish and naive, so I naturally misunderstood. I thought the emperor had some improper intentions towards me, and I was too frightened to respond, failing to grasp the hidden meaning behind his words. A long, long time passed after that. Only then did I realize that the emperor had wanted me to relay a message. He was the sovereign father. Words unspoken weighed heavy in his heart. Thus through me, the crown princess, came the consolation for the prince. Cease your trembling like a startled bird. Your position as heir is as immovable as Mount Tai. Yet in my dull-wittedness, by the time I grasped the emperor's true intentions, the battle for succession had already reached its fever pitch. In the end, it became a lamentable tale of father and son estranged, neither understanding the other's heart. Xiao Lin gazed at me and asked, "Why are you telling me all this?" Yes, why was I telling him all this? What did his future have to do with me, success or failure? We were no longer husband and wife. It wouldn't be a matter of life and death like in our past life. In my opinion, he's more suited to be emperor than Prince Qi. Though his methods are ruthless, at least he has principles. He managed to reign in the three powerful consort clans and restore peace to the court, unlike Prince Qi, who's completely manipulated by his maternal relatives. The empire would fare better in Xiao Lin's hands than in Prince Qi's. This is just a small hope of mine. As one among the countless masses, I casually explained, no particular reason, I just sensed His Majesty's fatherly love for your highness. Having said that, I offered no further explanation. A gust of wind blew by, scattering several volumes of scriptures. I stood up to pick it up when a bhikkhuni came running over. "Miss Li, would you be so kind as to write a few name tablets for me? We'll need them for the memorial service in a few days." I accepted the task. They were a stack of wooden tablets, each bearing a body seal on the back, with a space about 2 fingers wide left blank on the front for writing names. It was an identification plaque. The bhikkhuni handed me the register. I fetched the inkstone, paper, and brush. Without maidservants to assist, I never realized grinding ink could be so laborious. I huffed and puffed through the grinding for what felt like ages, while Xiao Lin remained silent, watching me with leisurely amusement. I suddenly felt displeased. "Your Highness, aren't you returning to the palace yet?" He shrugged. "Rare to have such leisure. I'll stay a while longer." A sudden idea struck me, and I flattered, "Your Highness, having been tutored by renowned masters since childhood, your calligraphy must far surpass mine. Since you're at leisure, why not show us your skill? The nuns in the convent would surely be overjoyed to know it's the Crown Prince's handiwork." Xiao Lin's expression remained composed, but the corners of his lips had already curled up. He extended his hand to me. The brush, I hurriedly handed it over. He opened the booklet and solemnly wrote everyone's names on the wooden plaque. Heh, picked up a little servant, might as well make use of him. I strolled aside to continue airing the scriptures. After about half an hour, Xiao Lin set down his brush. Done. I rushed over to check each item one by one. As I glanced around, my gaze suddenly halted. There was an exquisite wooden plaque, threaded with golden string and dangling a tiny jade lotus. "Li Xiyin," I suddenly spoke up. "What is this?" Xiao Lin glanced at it and said indifferently, "It's yours." I wrote it casually. "There happens to be a small lotus on my jade pendant." He actually thought I was talking about the jade lotus. I stared blankly at the sign. "Who is Li Xiyin?" Xiao Lin asked in confusion. "Have you lost your mind?" "You." Following my gaze, his expression suddenly changed. "Was it originally called Xiyin?" "Yes, but father feared it would be embarrassing to record on the Imperial Jade Register, so he changed it." "Why change it to the Sai from Bao Sai?" Is your father secretly mocking me as King Yu of Ju?" Once we were deeply in love, lying in bed chatting, he would twirl my hair around his finger, pondering the meaning of my name. But now, it has all turned into a bloody confrontation between two lives. The Sai from Bao Sai. I picked up the nameplate with a mocking smile. "But my name is Li Xiyin, Sai as in fourthborn." I looked into Xiao Lin's eyes and asked again, "Li Xiyin, who is she?" Xiao Lin pressed his lips tightly together, maintaining a silent standoff. Finally, he was the first to yield. Closing his eyes with a long sigh, he barely managed to utter a few words. As if it drained all his strength, "It's my wife," he said hoarsely, "my wife of 10 years. How laughable." I wanted to force a smile, but found I couldn't manage it. Bitterly, I asked, "Why couldn't you just keep pretending? I could just make up any excuse, say I wrote it wrong, and I'd deceive myself into believing it too." Even if I had vaguely guessed the truth before, I still chose to fool myself. I didn't want to face it, didn't want to face that the him in this lifetime, the him who was tender, affectionate, and always protective, was still the same him as before. It's the same one who used to look down on me in every way, criticize me endlessly, never stood up for me, always made me suffer grievances. Why couldn't you endure till the end? Wouldn't it be better to pretend we never knew each other and go our separate ways? Why must you always tear open the scars and face the bloody truth? I can laugh and joke with the unfamiliar Xiao Lin, as if I've died once before. Letting the grudges of my past life scatter, I could marry someone else, or become a nun, either would do. I yearn for a new life. Yet, I cannot face my past with composure. The grievances that lie between us, the painful memories shared by two, have stretched from past lives into this present one. "Xiyin," he said sorrowfully, I've pretended long enough." His eyes were filled with grief. "From the moment I first saw you at the double ninth banquet, I wanted to tell you. But when I woke up and saw the disgust on your face, I knew you still hated me. Our first meeting in our past life wasn't beautiful, there were too many misunderstandings. I thought, perhaps this rebirth is heaven's compensation. I pretended not to know you, treated you gently, hoping to earn your regard and change your opinion of me. For this, I watched as you defended another man. Seeing, I endured all of it." He reached out, wanting to touch my hair, "But I can't pretend anymore. I'm greedy, I don't want to stand at a distance. I want to hold you, to be with you forever." "Seeing," he sighed. "We were husband and wife for 10 years. His warm fingers brushed my cheek, but I slapped them away. I sneered with all the scorn I could muster. 10 years of marriage, and you didn't cherish it. Now that I'm dead, you suddenly feel nostalgic." I recalled every single incident from my past life, each one leaving me scarred all over. On our wedding night, he left me alone with the solitary red candles and cold pillow, making me the laughingstock of the palace. Only after the emperor's reprimand did he reluctantly share my bed. When I learned of his affection for Kui Yi, I requested a divorce. He was caned in punishment and, in his fury, confined me under house arrest for half a month upon his return. Just as our relationship was finally improving, it was as if he'd become a different person. To outsiders, he always appeared gentle as jade, but with me, his words were sharp as fangs. Every time we quarreled, it was always me who apologized first. He never once spoke a single conciliatory word. The Empress Dowager never liked me, constantly summoning me to the palace to reprimand me over every little thing. He never spoke up for me openly, only teaching me some methods to deal with the Empress at night. When concubines bullied me, he directly told me to handle them myself. But those were all people rewarded by the Empress and Consort Li. He couldn't easily punish them. So what could I do? And then there was childbirth, knowing full well I cannot bear children. Yet he torments me daily with his anxious demands for a legitimate heir. Driven to the brink of survival, still he refuses to father a child with a concubine to give me. After ascending the throne, the Empress Dowager grew powerful, constantly scheming to bring her niece into the palace. Preoccupied with state affairs, he repeatedly found excuses to delay. The Empress Dowager then turned her anger on me, constantly berating me for bewitching the emperor and disrupting court affairs. When I advised him to comply with the Empress Dowager, he lashed out at me, demanding to know why I wasn't standing with him. I was nearly worn to death by the Empress Dowager's torment, yet he remained blind to my suffering. All of this I endured. After all, we're not the only couple in this world with marital discord, but the child is gone. The Empress Dowager merely received a reprimand. Consort Li was only placed under house arrest. He didn't demand a single life in recompense for our child. In my final days, I clung to life through sheer obsession with my family, yet he forbade them from ever entering the palace again. Now he says he wants to stay with me forever. This is the funniest joke I've ever heard. I suddenly burst out laughing. The laughter grew louder, bending me double, until tears streamed from my eyes. I crouched on the ground, sobbing uncontrollably. I don't know how much time had passed when Yu Baiyunwen moved, slowly crouching down before me. He reached out slowly. Wanting to wipe away my tears, I grabbed his hand and bit down hard. I wish I could tear off a piece of flesh to quench the hatred burning in my heart. I bit down fiercely, my teeth sinking deep into flesh until numbness set in, the metallic taste of blood spreading through my mouth. Xiao Lin remained silent, brows furrowed as he endured my savage biting. After what felt like an eternity, he slowly withdrew his hand, wrapping his arm around my shoulder and pulling my weakened body into his embrace. He held me tightly, his voice choked with sobs. "I'm sorry, Ceen, I'm sorry." My heart felt as if it were being sliced by knives. I pushed and struck at him desperately, years of pent-up resentment finally erupting into a torrent of accusations. Why must we torture each other if you don't love me? Why couldn't you give me even a shred of dignity? Why did you always push me into the abyss just when I was about to fall for you? Xiao Lin, why? Just tell me why." His body trembled as tears fell onto my neck, tears streamed down my face. "I hate you, so I beg you, let me go in this lifetime." Xiao Lin panicked, gripping her tightly. "No, Ceen, forgive me, I have my reasons." I didn't want to hear it. Pushing him away desperately, he suddenly said, "Don't you want to know why I wouldn't allow your family to enter the palace?" I froze, raising my eyes to look at him. Having cried for too long, teardrops clung to my lashes. Leaving only his blurred face before me, bitter and helpless, he took a deep breath. "Because your parents and family don't love you as much as you imagine. You lost your child and lay bedridden. Your mother brought your sixth sister into the palace. Did you think she came to visit you? No. She came to recommend a replacement. They found a girl whose appearance and age were identical to yours in those days, attempting to supplant you." As he spoke, his words grew increasingly bitter, his tone even slipping into disorder. "My empress, grieving the loss of her beloved child, still unwell from her illness, yet they were already scheming to send in a new woman. What kind of mother and sister could do such a thing? Your sister even offered herself, claiming she could bear a child for her sister. Ridiculous. As if what I loved was merely that youthful face." He paused. "Tell me, if I didn't stop them, should I have stood by and watched them pour salt on your wounds, forcing you to agree to your sister entering the palace? As for your father," his voice turned icy, seeing no hope in the rear palace, he turned his ambitions toward the Prince of Qi, becoming entangled with him. "I sent him away to prevent him from sinking deeper into this mess." He grasped my shoulders and said solemnly, "Cine, you care about your family, always believing they love you, but they don't treat you as family, only as a pawn to be used. They cling to you when you're valuable, and abandon you when you're not." His voice faltered as he added dejectedly, "At the time, your health was weak. I didn't want to sadden you, so I concealed the truth in every way possible. Never did I imagine it would only hasten your loss of will to live. So, it was like this all along. In my past life, Mother brought my younger sister into the palace, endlessly boasting about how much she resembled me. She also said that if only my younger sister had a third of my good fortune, it would be enough. At the time, I mocked myself, thinking, what good fortune do I have? It turns out they were considering sending my sister into the palace. Even more, they wanted her to become the empress. So, no one cares about me." My tears fell. Xiao Lin wiped away my tears with his finger and sighed. "The greatest rift between us stemmed from the initial suspicion. At the double ninth festival banquet in our past life, you took a sword for me, yet the assassin was never found. My father grew suspicious of me, and later arranged our marriage. For a long time, I resented you, resented your humble origins, that your family couldn't support me, that you severed my strength. My father trusted you too much, and I even suspected you were his spy placed by my side. So in those early days, I neglected you, treated you poorly, and you were deeply disappointed in me. Later, when you requested a divorce, I investigated for a long time and finally discovered you were merely caught in the crossfire. Taking that sword strike was truly an undeserved calamity. I began drawing closer to you, only to find you no longer trusted me, unwilling to entrust me with your true heart." He smiled bitterly. "I knew the Empress disliked you, but I couldn't oppose her. I needed the support of her maternal clan's power to win in the end. After all, we're husband and wife, one body. If I failed, do you think they'd spare you? As for the concubines, I was frustrated by your softness. How I wished you'd discipline them yourself, but you were always too merciful. Left with no choice, I had to intervene. You resented my ruthlessness, feared and distanced yourself from me, but I had no alternative. The Eastern Palace was the only place within my control where I could give you some measure of freedom. I recall my past life, the blood from when my two concubines were beaten to death, a vast expanse of crimson. It floats before my eyes the moment I close them." I asked woodenly, "And the child?" "My only obsession was that hard-won child." Prince Qi was furious, saying that Xiao Lin was using the child in my womb as a political tool to overthrow the Empress Dowager and Consort Li. At first, I didn't believe it, because Xiao Lin was obsessed with having a legitimate heir, and the child in my womb was even the only one he'd conceived since our marriage. He would never use his own flesh and blood as bait. Yet during that period, the Pepper Chamber Palace was so tightly guarded by him that not even a drop of water could trickle through. Who can enter? The Empress Dowager who caused my miscarriage ultimately faced no real punishment. Only several high-ranking officials from her maternal clan were demoted or exiled. I gradually grew suspicious. Xiao Lin responded helplessly. "Cine, how could I harm our child? Don't you know how much I longed for this baby? And it's not that I insist on having the firstborn son, I just wanted you to bear the first child so you'd gain firm footing, with mother and child supporting each other. No one could scheme against your position." "Who exactly harmed our child?" "Xiao Lin. Do you remember Xiao Huan?" "Xiao Huan, my personal maid who accompanied me from childhood until I became empress. After we lost the child, Xiao Lin severely punished a group of palace servants. He told me Xiao Huan had been released from the palace. King Qi sent someone to deliver Xiao Huan's keepsake, telling me, Xiao Huan is dead, killed by Xiao Lin." "Xiao Huan, another reason I hate Xiao Lin." "It wasn't me who killed her," Xiao Lin explained helplessly. "She took her own life," he said. She was manipulated into delivering a poisoned soup prepared by Consort Li. The Empress Dowager merely gave the final push. When she learned the truth, Xiao Huan was overcome with remorse, felt she had failed you, and took her own life. Another misunderstanding. I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Why didn't you tell me back then? Xiao Lin smiled bitterly. You were bedridden at the time. And the imperial physician warned against any stimulation or distress. I always thought there would be more time, that once I dealt with everyone, I'd have the chance to explain everything to you. I believed my Seine would understand. She was always so easy to appease, just a little more time, and we could have weathered the storm together. But I was wrong. I never truly reached her heart. She wasn't easy to appease at all. Her magnanimity and obedience were merely repeated acts of self-compromise. She hated me so much that she refused to see me, so much that she didn't want to live. My nose stung fiercely, a watery haze clouding my vision. Though he stood right before me, I couldn't make out his face. After 2 lifetimes of entanglement, perhaps this was when our hearts drew closest. We gazed at each other wordlessly, with only endless tears between us. I don't know how long it had been when the sun gradually dimmed, painting the horizon with brilliant sunset hues. My tears had long dried up, and my throat ached from hoarseness. Half of my body had gone numb. When I tried to move, I realized Xiao Lin's right arm had been holding me all along. I slowly pushed him away and poured myself a cup of cold tea to soothe my throat. I caressed the teacup, recalling how Prince Qi had claimed to be the ultimate victor. How did you die in your past life? A cold wind swept through as Xiao Lin clenched his fist, coughing into it for a while. He sidestepped the main issue. 7 days after you left, Xiao Wei raised his sword and slew the emperor. Did King Qi kill you with his own hands? I was puzzled. You weren't this weak in your past life. How could he have killed you? He even carried a sword into the court. Didn't the palace guards stop him? Where were you? Xiao Lin remained silent for a moment. Before your memorial tablet. He smiled helplessly. I had suspended court for 7 days. That night, my mind and spirit were utterly broken, which gave him the opening he needed. Earlier, Prince Qi said there was something suspicious about my death, and I wondered, hadn't Xiao Lin investigated the cause of my death? Now I understand. He was too grief-stricken to look into it yet. How ridiculous. What's the use of such sorrow when I'm already gone? Xiao Lin suddenly stood up, coughing violently. Thinking he had choked on the wind, I handed him a cup of cold tea. Xiao Lin took it and drank, then suddenly lurched forward, spitting out a mouthful of blood. He collapsed into my arms, his blood staining my clothes red. I was at a complete loss, could only hold him and call for help. Soon, the guards outside the courtyard gate rushed in, their faces pale with shock. Your Highness. They scrambled to carry Xiao Ling down the mountain, but he refused to leave. He gripped my hand tightly, pleading. Seine, come back with me. I forcefully pulled my hand back from his grasp, refusing to meet his gaze. I've said it before, I beg your Highness to let me go in this lifetime. He froze for a moment before saying hoarsely, but, my time is running out. In the end, I didn't leave with him. It's said that Xiao Lin returned home only to take to his bed, vomiting blood for days on end. I stared blankly at the bloodstains on my clothes. 2 lifetimes of entanglement, must there always be one of us indebted to the other for life? I settled into Jingsai nunnery, and my family didn't blame me for Xiao Lin's illness. It wasn't until several days later that my eldest brother came to see me. There was a person following behind him. Tang Yufeng wanted to ask me to take him to pay respects before my mother's spirit tablet. Mother was buried in the Li family cemetery, with 2 concubines beside her. Both had borne children for father. Eldest brother led us here before leaving the 2 of us to talk. Tang Yufeng presented the offerings and kowtowed several times with resounding thuds. I have almost no memory of my mother. She died very early. In the occasional fleeting fragments, I only recall her gently teasing me with a rattle drum. I said, I asked my legal mother, your birth mother didn't abandon you. She was sold into the household by your father. Tang Yufeng, I know, his voice was flat. My father was a degenerate gambler. After he sold my mother, he lost everything within half a year. Then he sold me too. I was too young to work and was beaten black and blue. In the end, a kind-hearted young lady saved me. Later, I ended up by His Highness the Crown Prince's side after many twists and turns. I asked in confusion, then what you said that day? Tang Yufeng looked up at me. Someone put me up to it. You can probably guess who that person is. Can you guess who sent him to make excuses? The Crown Prince, the Emperor. Suddenly, I felt something was off. Then who did you originally intend to kill? Why did you end up stabbing me? Tang Yufeng avoided eye contact. I can't say. I grew more puzzled. Was it Xiao Lin who ordered this? He flatly refused. No, I didn't think so either. He didn't need to risk his life to win me back. Xiao Lin. Just thinking about his injuries made me slightly uneasy. I asked softly, is he really about to die? Tang Yufeng didn't react at first, but after a while, he nodded. It's very serious. He looked at me. Your Highness called your name multiple times in the night. My heart trembled, and I averted my gaze. If you're worried, go see for yourself. Imperial physician Shu said it's only a matter of days now. Even that old eccentric Shu can't cure him. Didn't he say it was a piece of cake just a few months ago? Seeing that I remained unmoved, Tang Yufeng didn't press further. After leaving the Li family mausoleum, my eldest brother excused himself on some business and found someone else to see me home. That someone turned out to be none other than Jiang Yihan. I suspected my family still hadn't given up their scheming, probably hoping Jiang Yihan would change his mind about me. But having died once before, I had long since abandoned thoughts of love. I bowed slightly in gratitude. Young Master Jiang, I've troubled you. Jiang Yihan nodded and helped me into the carriage. We sat in silence. With only the clip-clop of horse hooves between us, Jiang Yihan didn't look at me as he said, have you heard about the Crown Prince's injury? I nodded. Even he knows about it. It seems there's truly no hope left this time. Xiao Lin, oh Xiao Lin, for all your boasts of divine prowess and peerless archery, it turns out even you are no match for the will of heaven. Jiang Yihan continued, no matter what happened in the past, his chances are slim this time. What's the point of you living this lonely, bitter life alone with an oil lamp and ancient Buddha? Your father won't easily let you become a nun. If you insist, you might anger him and end up being hastily married off to some man. But if you're willing, he stopped mid-sentence. I smiled faintly. I understand your kindness, but I'm truly exhausted. With no more genuine love left to give, someone like me would be unfair to others. Soon we arrived at Jingxi Nunnery. Jiang Yihan accompanied me all the way to the courtyard gate. Gathering his courage, he said, Li Xiyin, I'll always be here, just turn around if you need me. I bowed slightly. I'm sorry, I didn't turn back. Jiang Yihan sighed with a bitter smile and turned to leave. I returned to the courtyard to find that blood-stained garment had been washed by someone unknown. The pale pink floral pattern remained, while the crimson stains had faded, like the vitality slowly draining from a person's life. It was as if the chattering clamor of a past life. The tender affections had in the end turned to indifferent disregard, returning to dust. Suddenly, my chest tightened with a pang. I quickly ran out of the courtyard gate and called out to Jiang Yihan, who was about to leave, young Master Jiang, could I trouble you to take me somewhere? Jiang Yihan halted his steps. I hurriedly gathered my things. I needed to see Xiao Lin just once, even if it's the last meeting. The grievances from past lives and this life remain unsettled. I refuse to owe him anything in confusion. I'll say to his face, we're even now. When you walk the Yellow Springs Road, don't file complaints against me before King Yama. I'll tell him, I've loved and hated, but now there's neither love nor hatred. I still need to tell him, in the next life, stay away from me, don't come looking for me again. I want to speak, I want to make everything clear. The door creaked open. I turned around. Young Master Jiang, I've packed up. A handful of powder hit me square in the face, and everything went black. I'd been tied up again. This time, it wasn't in the wild woods, it was inside some pitch-black room, eerie, damp, and freezing cold. My hands and feet were tied, and I was bound to a large pillar. Suddenly, the candlelight dimmed, and then a bonfire blazed to life. By the flickering glow, I could see my surroundings clearly. It was an underground palace, with water seeping through the floor. The broken dragon pillar resembled the ruins of an abandoned palace. A figure in black robes and a veiled hat approached, walking upon the water. I saw her face clearly. After a long moment of stunned silence, I finally sighed. I've guessed many people, but I never expected it to be you. Kui Yi removed her veil and smiled gracefully. I asked her in confusion, what deep-seated grudge exists between us? Could it be just because in our past lives I took the position of crown princess that was rightfully yours? Kui Yi retorted, isn't that enough? I shook my head. You're directing your hatred at the wrong person. I said, you should hate Xiao Lin, hate him for lacking the courage to defy the imperial decree and marry you. You should also hate the emperor, hate him for mismatching the couples. But you shouldn't hate me, because I, too, had no choice in the matter. Kui Yi curled her lips. It doesn't matter, even if you're innocent, you're still a stumbling block in my way. I hadn't realized her obsession with becoming the crown princess ran so deep. After a moment of contemplation, I asked, then, before I die, may I ask you a few questions? Kui Yi, speak. In my past life, You played a part in orchestrating my death, didn't you? I had always believed I died of melancholy. And even Xiao Lin couldn't uncover the truth, yet the Prince of Qi told me there was something suspicious about my death. The reincarnator had told him the truth. Kui nodded. Correct, I asked quietly. Who was it? Kui smiled triumphantly. The last person you saw. A drop of water from the pillar fell onto the back of my neck, sending a shiver through me. It was indeed him, Tang Yufeng. Upon closer thought, something felt off. At that time, both the Empress Dowager and Consort Li had been stripped of power, and no one could enter my palace. Who else but Tang Yufeng could harm me? Then I recalled Tang Yufeng's childhood experiences that he had mentioned before. Tang Yufeng was sold into the Kui household, where he was frequently beaten and scolded. A kind-hearted young lady saved him. The one who saved him, was it Kui Yi? Only she would have the ability to send Tang Yufeng to Xiao Lin's side. I asked again, did you kill Xiao Lin? Kui Yi was taken aback for a moment, but didn't evade the question. Yes, I asked in confusion. Why? Didn't you love him? Love? She seemed to have heard a joke. How foolish must a woman be to stake her life and fortune on a man's affection? She sneered. Do you think a man's love lasts long? My elder brother was Xiao Lin's study companion, and I grew up with him. He promised to marry me when we were children. But what happened later? With just one imperial decree, he married you. If he truly loved me, how could he change his mind so quickly? How could he fall in love with you within a year or two of marriage? Later, I saw through it. He didn't love me. If he truly loved me, he wouldn't have allowed me to suffer under Lu Kai's torment. His so-called affection was nothing more than valuing my family, the support of my Kui clan. Since that's the case, why should I love him? I nodded. I see. So you allied with the King of Qi and killed Xiao Lin. Don't say that. I didn't kill him, I just added a little sedative to his pastries. Haha. She pinched her little finger and laughed triumphantly. A chill ran through me. Did Tang Yufeng deliver it for you again? Xiao Lin was cautious. He might not trust food sent by others, but Tang Yufeng was different. After all, he had followed Xiao Lin for over a decade, and Xiao Lin regarded him as a trusted confidant. But could mere childhood kindness so easily buy his loyalty and make him betray his master? Kui Yi sneered. Tang Yufeng is nothing but my dog. Had it not been for me back then, how could he have survived? How dare he forget my kindness just because he climbed to a higher branch, and now I have to grovel and beg for his help? That stupid dog, when he learned it was his own pastries that killed Xiao Lin, he was so ashamed he took his own life. Ahahaha. So Tang Yufeng never intended to harm Xiao Lin, it was just a twist of fate that made him an unwitting accomplice. I watched her smug expression and asked the final question. So, how did you die? Kui Yi's unrestrained laughter froze on her face. She smoothed a strand of hair by her temple. Beaten to death by Lu Kai. As if recalling some unpleasant memory, her arrogance dissolved into emptiness and sorrow. She gazed at the dripping water. He often beat me, suspicious and paranoid. If I so much as exchanged a few words with another man, I'd come home to another beating. I begged my father and brothers for help, but they said they didn't dare offend the Prince of Chengyang. I pleaded with Xiao Lin to grant me a divorce, and he said, wait a little longer. So I waited and waited, until despair turned to numbness. Suddenly, she became hysterical, clutching at me desperately and screaming, Li Xiyin, can you understand my pain? I've had enough of this torment. I can't take it anymore. Finally, I realized no one could save me. The only way to survive was to become the most powerful woman in the realm. If Xiao Lin couldn't give me that, I'd turn to Xiao Wei. I would be the crown princess. Then the empress who sat on the throne mattered not to me. But I was so close, so very close. I pity her past, yet lament her stubbornness. If Xiao Lin proved unreliable, would Xiao Wei be any more dependable? Xiao Wei already has a principal wife, his cousin, the daughter of his maternal uncle. Even Xiao Wei himself must defer to his uncle's family. How could he possibly divorce his wife and marry Kui Yi instead? Moreover, Lu Kai had refrained from lethal measures for years, yet at the final moment, he struck her down with deadly force. Was there someone behind the scenes directing this? I heaved a long sigh. The mysteries of my past life were finally unveiled today. In her previous life, Kui Yi endured immense suffering, which gradually bred resentment. She sought out Tang Yufeng and, leveraging their former master-servant bond, coerced him into poisoning me in an attempt to become the empress. Alas, Xiao Lin remained stubbornly devoted, leaving her deeply disappointed. Thus, she joined forces with the King of Qi, once again exploiting Tang Yufeng to bring about Xiao Lin's demise. She believed the King of Qi would honor his promise to make her empress, But little did she know he was utterly ruthless, directly ordering Lu Kai to accidentally beat her to death. Kui Yi, having schemed with all her might, ended up orchestrating her own downfall. I thought for a moment before asking her, so in this life, you're repeating your old tricks, planning to eliminate me first, marry Xiao Lin, but then you discovered he's also been reborn, so you once again considered defecting to the King of Qi, and told him about your past life to gain his trust. Is that right? Kui Yi wiped the tears from the corner of her eye and smiled radiantly. Exactly. It seems you're not as foolish as I imagined. I found it rather amusing. Thank you for the compliment. No one could live over a decade longer without gaining some wisdom. At the Double Ninth Festival banquet, Tang Yufeng's assassination attempt on me was orchestrated by Kui Yi. So that sword strike wasn't accidental, it was meant for me. I asked, in our past life, did Tang Yufeng know I was his sister? Kui Yi froze, then turned her head away without speaking. I waited patiently. She said woodenly, he found out in the end, so he took his own life. Tang Yufeng must have been utterly desperate before his suicide. He had harmed his master, and even personally killed his own sister. I glanced at her and sneered, so you're not completely indifferent to this blade after all. Kui Yi flew into a rage. Don't you dare slander me. Her reaction was startlingly intense. I wisely shut my mouth, but I couldn't help asking, since Lu Kai hurt you the most, why didn't you take revenge on him in this life? Instead, you threw yourself into his arms. Kui Yi replied coldly, he's just another useful dog, that's all. Then she smiled faintly. I should actually thank you, it was you who helped send him to prison, otherwise, I wouldn't have known how to deal with him as he is now. I nodded. If you're grateful, then let me go. She rolled her eyes at me. She circled around me. Li Xiyin, I'm telling you all this today for two reasons. First, because I'm too lonely and have no one to confide in. Second, because my scheme is so flawless, wouldn't it be a shame if no one appreciated it? Truly brilliant, you've managed to outwit so many of us. I sincerely praised her. But have you considered that you've overlooked two people? She frowned. Who? First is Prince Qi, a man who's all bark and no bite, propped up entirely by women. His marriage isn't his to decide. Your Kui family is powerful, true, but his maternal relatives are equally formidable. Given the choice between two powers, are you so certain he'd choose you in this lifetime? Second is the Emperor. In your past life, the Emperor had already passed away, and you took advantage of Xiao Lin's mental instability to scheme your way to success. But in this life, the Emperor is in his prime with 7 or 8 years left. Do you think Prince Qi's petty tricks could escape his notice? Kui Yi tilted her head. Xiao Lin is dying, didn't you know? As for the Emperor, she laughed triumphantly. Who knows if the Emperor will even survive tonight? I frowned. What does Prince Qi intend to do to the Emperor? She spread her hands, feigning innocence. How should I know? Perhaps he'll take my advice and reenact the regicide from his past life right in the palace hall. I finally relaxed completely. I cast a pitying glance. Your plans are doomed to fail again in this lifetime. The Imperial Guards are under the Emperor's control. Prince Qi can't make waves. The Emperor is in his prime. A single rebuke from him would shatter Prince Qi's courage. Kui Yi scoffed. You don't understand Prince Qi. He's not as timid as you imagine, I said. You don't understand the Emperor. He's not as gentle as you imagine. When his imperial power is threatened, even his closest kin can be executed. Kui Yi replied. Then let's wait and see. We fell into silence. The water on the ground kept rising. The underground palace was pitch black. With no daylight in sight, I asked, what time is it now? Kui Yi replied, why do you ask? I smiled and said, to see if anyone will come to rescue me. Kui Yi sneered, stop daydreaming. I had you kidnapped from the quiet contemplation nunnery and drove Jiang Yihan away. I must say, Jiang Yihan is truly a gentleman. He didn't take a single step inside when told not to enter. I glanced sideways. Do you like him? I could tell you had quite a fondness for him during the Lantern Festival. Kui Yi replied, I don't like him. I just refuse to believe he feels nothing for me. I couldn't understand. Is men's approval and praise really that important? Must you live according to their expectations? Suddenly, I remembered my past life. She insisted she would never be a concubine. I thought she lived for her own dignity, but it turned out to be just a bargaining chip. She wanted the admiration of thousands, the love of men, the envy of women, a life of wealth and status, and the aloof pride of standing above the world. Wanting everything only leads to gaining nothing. Kui Yi ignored me and continued on her own. If you don't care, why were you so desperate over a man in your past life? She paused. It's strange though, you don't seem the least bit worried about Xiao Lin. Don't you love him either? I was speechless. What good would worrying about him do? I'm trapped here by you right now. Kui Yi, you say he's dying, and now you're about to kill me too. Maybe when we open our eyes again, we'll be reborn once more. Kui Yi roared, in your dreams. I will succeed in this life, there won't be a next time. I was afraid she'd lose control and stab me to death right then. Only when she had calmed down slightly did I try to reason with her. I'm sincerely advising you to let me go now and return home. Just pretend none of this ever happened. You'll still be the third miss of the Chancellor's manor. Every person in her plan was a variable. This abandoned palace must have belonged to Lu Kai's ancestors. With Lu Kai in prison, he might have already confessed. This meant her hiding place could easily be discovered, and her subordinates were no loyal servants. They could easily turn against her. The fact that Prince Qi sought to conspire with me was already a betrayal of her. In his previous life, Tang Yufeng refused to betray Xiao Lin, and in this life, knowing I'm his sister, he's even less likely to be devoted to her. As for Xiao Lin knows her better than I do. On the Lantern Festival night, he abruptly took out that deeply meaningful jade pendant, and Kui Yi was overjoyed, seemingly trying to please Xiao Lin, but in truth, the act was overdone. The real 17-year-old Kui Yi, with her lofty temperament, would feign indifference on the surface no matter how much she desired something deep down. That jade pendant was the bait. Kui Yi paid no heed to my warnings, saying, don't try to sweet-talk me with your clever words, there's no turning back for me now. I just need to wait a few more hours for the outcome, whether Prince Qi succeeds or not. She gripped my chin with a vicious smile. You'll die either way. As soon as she finished speaking, a scream rang out from outside. Everyone inside was startled. The torchlight illuminated the underground palace as the newcomer leaped forward first. Seeing, it was Tang Yufeng. Seeing Kui Yi pause her steps, he called out, Miss Kui. Kui Yi reacted swiftly, drawing a dagger and pressing it against my neck. Don't come any closer. Tang Yufeng grew extremely anxious. Miss Kui, don't do anything foolish, put the knife down. Kui Yi snapped coldly. Get back, move away. He wanted to retreat, but a flood of imperial guards surged forward from behind, escorting someone to the front. The figure was wrapped in a thick crane feather cloak, their face deathly pale without a trace of color. Kui Yi, he had barely uttered 2 words before being seized by a violent coughing fit. Forced to lean on his attendants for support, release her, and I might spare your life. Kui Yi stared at him blankly. It's really you, it's really you. Her laughter was more pitiful than weeping. You're dying, yet you still came to save her, Xiao Lin said. Lu Kai has already confessed. Release Sai Yin, and I can protect you. Kui Yi said bitterly, you lied to me. In our past life, you also promised to help me get a divorce, but you didn't keep your word, you deceived me. And because of you, I was beaten to death. Do you know how much his fists hurt? Xiao Lin replied gloomily. The edict had already been written, but that day the Empress passed away. He looked up. I didn't lie to you, so you were too busy arranging funeral affairs for your Empress, is that it? For 7 whole days, it never crossed your mind. Kui Yi grew even more resentful, with a forceful press of her hand. She left a bloody mark on my neck. Don't. Xiao Lin was horrified, stumbling forward. Let Sai Yin go, and I'll agree to anything you ask. Kui Yi sneered. I want you to marry me. I want to be Empress. Can you do that? Xiao Lin was stunned. The prolonged silence infuriated Kui Yi. She let out a self-deprecating laugh. I knew it. Li Xiyin. Look, this is a man's promise. She whispered in her ear with a sigh, her gaze turning vicious. Keep me company on the road to the underworld. A sharp pain shot through her neck, followed by a deafening boom. Kui Yi was yanked away by a thin wire, flung 10 feet back as several arrows pierced through her heart. She unwillingly kept her eyes open, staring vacantly at the dome. The light in her eyes gradually faded. The scent of blood filled my nostrils. Xiao Lin's anxious expression flashed before my eyes, his lips moving as he called, Sai Yin, look at me. Sai Yin. The wound Kui Yi gave me was deep, but it didn't hit anything vital. Thanks to Jiang Yihan hiding in the shadows early on, he intervened at the critical moment and forced Kui Yi to pull his strike. A lot happened that day. Jiang Yihan had indeed been lured away by Kui Yi's men at first. Unfortunately, he had just reached the foot of the mountain when he saw Tang Yufeng leading a group of men coming to find me. He said Lu Kai had confessed, and the emperor ordered me to enter the palace for a confrontation. Unable to rest easy, he turned back with Tang Yufeng. When the 2 of them knocked open the door, all they saw was a scene of utter chaos. They sensed something was amiss and immediately informed the crown prince. Just as they were searching around like headless flies, someone suddenly sent word, telling them to investigate the abandoned palace. Thus, they found Kui Yi's hiding place almost effortlessly. As for Prince Qi, he had the ambition but lacked the nerve, while in the midst of poisoning. The emperor noticed his guilty conscience and had him apprehended on the spot. Qiyi died, and her death was pitiful. 1,000 arrows pierced his heart. She was a very intelligent woman, but she had poor judgment. Not a single man she chose was reliable. My injuries weren't serious, but Xiao Lin, overwhelmed with rage, fell ill again. No wonder Prince Qi had the audacity. With him lying there half dead, anyone would get ideas. The emperor ordered me to attend to him again. This time, I devoted myself wholeheartedly, not daring to be careless. At night, when the servants were gone, I took his hand, looking at his pale face, his long lashes covering his eyes. A sudden wave of sorrow washed over me. In my past life, I refused to see him before I passed away. He could only sneak in at night while I was asleep, holding my hand just like this, pleading by my bedside. "Scene, when you get better, I'll take you on an incognito tour. We'll leave the palace to have fun." Don't you like the 9th prince the most? He's already memorized the 3-character classic. I'll name him Crown Prince and let you raise him. Alright, Scene, promise me, don't give up. He thought I was asleep, but I was just too exhausted, too tired to even open my eyes. I held Xiao Lin's hand against my cheek, just as he had caressed me countless times before. "I know you can hear me, so listen well. I'll only say this once. Actually, I really like you." The dislike was real. And so was the fondness. I hated how sharp your tongue was, but I also loved how you could make me laugh. Life in the palace was so dull, with all its rigid rules and proper decorum. Every time I lost our little verbal battles, the maids would be delighted, because whenever I lost, you'd send me gifts. Didn't you notice? Later on, I was deliberately letting you win. When I was with child, all the palace maids prayed for a boy. They hoped I'd bear the firstborn son to secure my position. But a young imperial physician quietly told me it was likely a princess. I thought, you'd love a princess too, wouldn't you? I wanted you to take her hunting, to teach her archery with your own hands. I admit, when you first neglected me, I was deeply hurt and sorrowful. But later, there was also much happiness. Had it not been for so many misunderstandings and wasted years, we might have been a bickering yet devoted couple, growing old together through ordinary squabbles. So please, get better soon. I have so many wishes waiting to be fulfilled with you. As I spoke, my nose burned fiercely, and the emotions suppressed for 2 lifetimes turned to tears that welled up and spilled from my eyes. I couldn't help but glance around. No one. I quickly leaned in and planted a kiss on his lips. I tried to stand up, but someone held the back of my head firmly. Xiao Ling opened his eyes, staring at me with an amused smile. "Li Xin, you took liberties with me." I was startled and blurted out in panic, "I didn't." Was it an illusion then? He pressed the back of my head, tilted his face up, and kissed me. "I don't believe it. Let's try again." He kissed me deeply, our lips and tongues entwined. "I love you." His fingertips traced my brows and eyes, tender and lingering. "Xin, I love you." He held me close, kissing me for a long while, but I still worried about his injuries and hurried to call the imperial physician. Old Shu, that eccentric, made a rare appearance to take his pulse and prescribe medicine. I took advantage of Xiao Lin drinking his medicine to quietly follow and ask Old Man Shu, "Mr. Shu, can the Crown Prince recover from this illness?" He looked utterly baffled. "Hasn't he already recovered? Today's the last day of treatment." I didn't understand. Rumors outside say he's on death's door, weak and sickly. Old Man Shu pulled me aside and whispered, "That's the story the Emperor and Crown Prince are spreading. The schemes of nobles, we dare not speak carelessly." I hurriedly asked, "Then what about the coughing up blood?" Old Man Shu slapped his thigh. "That was me giving him strong medicine to detoxify." For a short while, his qi and blood were depleted, making him appear near death. I was stunned. So he's actually in good health. Old Man Shu, perfectly healthy. He's been running around recklessly these past few days, which slightly harmed his body. But no matter, a couple days of rest will restore him. Me, damn that Xiao Lin, lying to me again. All that talk about having little time left, about being bedridden with illness, nothing but tricks to deal with Prince Qi. Old Man Shu handed me the prescription he'd written. "Here, go brew this." Furious beyond measure, I turned and slapped the prescription into the servant's arms. "Go tell your crown prince that this lady won't serve him anymore." The servant, her, before I left. I went to the palace to request an audience with the emperor. The emperor was painting and said with a smile, "What brings you to see me?" I knelt down and kowtowed deeply. "Imperial father." The emperor scoffed, "What a shameless girl, not even married in yet. And you're already calling me imperial father." I remained kneeling without rising. After a long while, the emperor sighed, When did you find out? I said. The day we were trapped in the underground palace. That day, Kui Yi's words were full of loopholes. There was always one crucial person missing. I pondered for a long time before realizing who had been secretly protecting me all along. It wasn't Xiao Lin, it's the Emperor. The Emperor has also been reborn. I don't know exactly when it started. But during that hunting expedition, when Lu Kai abandoned me in the wild forest, the first person who noticed and sent the Imperial Guards to search for me was the Emperor. It was also the Emperor who sent the message for Tang Yufeng and the others to search the underground palace, dispatching the Imperial Guards to accompany them. I suspect he had already secured control of the overall situation, which is why he could foresee everyone's actions. I wasn't the only one who noticed the Emperor's rebirth. Xiao Ling must have known as well. That's why in this life he did nothing but play the filial son, waiting for the Prince of Qi to make a mistake. The Emperor sighed deeply. What wrong have I done in wanting the best for my own son? He looked at me. In my past life, I carelessly mismatched couples, creating two pairs of resentful partners, and I deeply regret it. But seeing that your bond with the Crown Prince remains unbroken, I grow anxious. In this life, I dare not arrange marriages recklessly. Do you have any thoughts of your own? My mind was a tangled mess. I don't know, a past life woven with love, hate, and misunderstandings. Even if there were regrets, I couldn't tell whether there was more affection or more obsession. I thought for a moment and said, Your Majesty, please allow me to return to the silent contemplation nunnery. I wish to withdraw into solitude for a time. After a brief consideration, the Emperor replied, Granted, and so I returned to the mountains, but not at Jingxi Nunnery. It was at a new Taoist temple instead, named Yunshu Temple. I am its presiding abbot. After Xiao Lin recovered, he repeatedly invited me to return. Seeing my ironclad resolve to pursue spiritual practice, he had this temple built on the mountain opposite Jingxi Nunnery. He insisted on making me the abbess, pestering me relentlessly with daily invitations. I ignored him. Devoting myself each day to seeking immortality and enlightenment, I grew increasingly convinced that being a crown princess couldn't compare to the joy of being an immortal, until one day, I caught a madman in the temple. The rogue was truly wild. With a body of well-defined muscles that left several female Taoists in the temple utterly infatuated, I tied him up and escorted him to the authorities. The female Taoists who had been involved with him wept and begged me to spare him. But I paid them no heed. Furious, the rogue shouted, Love between men and women is natural and free. You've never experienced it, so you envy others and sever all ties of affection. What kind of Taoist cultivator are you? His words left everyone deep in thought. Within days, the senior disciples began requesting permission to descend the mountain and experience the mortal world. Unable to decide, I sought advice from the old Taoist master. I asked, Worldly attachments bring only heartache and harm. Why do they rush toward them so eagerly? The old Taoist stroked his beard and countered, Have you truly entered the mundane world? Have you truly immersed yourself in it and then transcended it? His words left me momentarily stunned. When Xiao Lin came again, I was still puzzled about the matter of the madman. After hearing this, he fell into thoughtful silence, but he seemed to have missed the point. He took off his outer robe, revealing a lean and toned figure, then asked, How do I compare to that madman? Me, he kept pressing. So I answered perfunctorily, Fine, fine, you're much better than that madman. He then sat beside me, eyes gleaming brightly, and asked, Then would you like to experience the mortal world? I froze. He caressed my cheek and leaned in, his breath warm against my face. Taoist Master Li, the sweet love between men and women, the intimate bond between parent and child. The devotion and offerings of the people. You've never experienced giving and receiving. How can you attain enlightenment and become immortal? Pushing me onto the bed by my shoulders, he said, I wish to help you taste all the joys and sorrows of this world, to understand the suffering of all living beings. On the day you achieve immortality, just grant me one elixir of eternal life. His kisses rained down densely on my shoulders and neck. And I was so thoroughly bewitched by him that I suddenly snapped back to reality. Wait, how dare he take advantage while indulging? He wants to enjoy worldly pleasures while also coveting my immortal elixir. After 2 years of spiritual cultivation, my self-control has only grown weaker. I might as well return to the mundane world. After repeated confirmations, the Emperor arranged our marriage. Once again, I stepped into the familiar palace. This time, it was no longer a square cage. Xiao Lin's respect and devotion had opened another door in this life. It became a courtyard, a home, where I could come and go as I pleased. In this life, with my body healthy, I became pregnant 2 months after marrying into the Eastern Palace. I was cautious and careful, afraid that the mischievous little one might slip away again. Xiao Lin was also cautious, coming to accompany me every day after court, pressing his ear to my belly to listen for movement, he said. That's quite a kick. Could it be a boy? With a nervous heart, I countered without answering. If it's a girl, would you still love her? Of course, he replied with a beaming smile, pulling me into his embrace. You once said you hoped I'd teach her hunting and archery. I'll make sure to train her well. If her future consort dares misbehave, she can just shoot an arrow through his head. Hearing this, the little one in my belly gave an excited kick. The day I gave birth to the little princess, the entire palace came to offer congratulations. Jiang Yihan sent someone to deliver a special gift. It was the jade pendant I had snatched from Xiao Lin's hand. Jiang Yihan left only 4 words, "Return to its rightful owner." I gave the jade pendant to Xiao Lin, when he suddenly stroked his chin in thought. Jiang Yihan isn't married yet, right? I should go see if there are any suitable young ladies. We must hurry and get him settled. I nudged him. We've been married for over a year. And you're still wary of him? Xiao Lin sulked unhappily. He's the only one in 2 lifetimes who's ever made me feel threatened. He took my hand and quite deliberately made me touch the scar over his heart, acting spoiled and sweet. Cien, who's in your heart now? I caressed the scar. The crown prince, he pressed further. Who is the crown prince? Xiao Lin. Who is Xiao Lin? Husband. He beamed with joy. Yes. End of main text. Tang Yufeng's extra story. The year I turned 5, mother disappeared. The neighbors pitied me and said, "Fenga, you must remember your mother." This bag of rice was exchanged for her life. I didn't understand why having rice meant not having a mother. Less than half a year later, my father sold me too. I was sold into the Kui household. I was young when I worked at the Kui residence, doing heavy manual labor and getting beaten at the slightest provocation. The overseer and laborers in the firewood shed couldn't bully others, so they picked on me instead. One time, I was beaten so badly I became terrified, hiding in the garden bushes. A kite landed right on my head. The little girl who came to retrieve the kite was as delicate as carved jade, and she screamed in shock, terrified. I trembled uncontrollably, tears streaming down my face. Moved by pity, she stopped her maids and servants. She pulled me out of the bushes, her heart aching as she looked at my blood-covered wounds. Who did this to you? I didn't dare answer. Telling the truth would only earn me a worse beating. She had her maid apply medicine to my wounds and even gifted me a set of clothes. I hesitated to accept, but she lifted her chin proudly. Don't worry, just say third young miss gave it to you. No one would dare trouble you then. I carried the clothes back, but before I could enter the house, a servant grabbed me by the hair and threw me against the wall. You lowly dog of a slave, how dare you cling to the third miss? The servant kicked me. The third miss is the madam's precious darling. Are you worthy of her rewards? Disgusting. He snatched the clothes away and beat me fiercely to vent his anger. I seethed with rage but dared not speak. From then on, I became even more cautious, afraid of angering them. And so I lived in despair for a whole year. When spring came the following year, I was sweeping the garden when I encountered the third young mistress again. She exclaimed in surprise, "Hey, aren't you that? What's his name?" I kept the steward's warning in mind and dared not have the slightest connection with her anymore. I turned to leave but was stopped by her. "Stop," she ran over angrily. "Why do you run away when you see me?" I knelt down and said, "This lowly servant is unworthy and dares not taint the young lady's sight." She planted her hands on her hips. "I'm not that kind of domineering person, you know." She frowned and looked me over. "Did they really give you such thin clothes to wear?" Afraid she might give me more gifts and incur the steward's resentment, I quickly said, "Thank you, miss, but I'm not cold. I have work to do, so I'll take my leave." She grabbed my tattered sleeve with one hand. "Wait, I haven't finished speaking." But she grabbed my wound, and the pain made me gasp involuntarily. She quickly let go. "What's wrong?" I didn't dare to answer. She grew angry, rolled up my sleeve, and saw the fresh wounds layered over old scars. She hesitated. "Did they beat you again?" Gritting her teeth, she said, "Don't go back. Come be my guard." "I want you," the maid beside her advised. "Miss, this isn't proper etiquette. The madam won't agree." I didn't want to put her in an awkward position, so I turned to leave. After some hesitation, she called me back. "What is your name?" I bowed my head slightly, reporting to the young miss. "My name is Tang Yufeng." She nodded. "Tang Yufeng, is it? I'll arrange a good position for you." I thought she was just saying it casually. Who would have guessed that a few days later, she actually did it? The eldest young master came specifically to the firewood shed to claim me, then gifted me to a nobleman. That man was of imperial lineage. It turned out to be the crown prince. The third young miss tugged at his sleeve coquettishly. He's so pitiful. Brother crown prince must treat him well. The crown prince, mature beyond his years, replied, I will carefully evaluate the one sister AE has sent me. Before parting, the third young miss said, you must prove yourself worthy beside His Highness the Crown Prince. When you gain his favor in the future, don't forget me. I knew this was my only chance at survival. I bowed in gratitude again and again. I had served the Crown Prince for 15 years. I had always thought Miss Kui would undoubtedly become the Crown Princess. Yet unexpectedly, another woman snatched the position away. The Crown Prince dislikes her and told me to be wary of her. I didn't like her either, but after keeping an eye on her for a whole month, I couldn't find anything wrong. She was timid, obedient, and somewhat cowardly. I noticed she didn't even dare to get angry when wronged. She would only hide in a corner and cry. Seeing her reminded me of my younger self. Driven by some inexplicable emotion, I helped her discipline the servants. She was someone who trusted others too easily. After I'd merely helped her twice, she already considered me her closest friend, confiding all her heartfelt thoughts to me. Despite being out of favor herself, she still picked out fine gifts to thank me. I'm beginning to think she might truly just be an innocent girl caught in undeserved misfortune. It's a pity she's too naive. Naivety and ignorance won't keep one alive in the palace. Without the favor of those in power, even I can't protect her for much longer. Fortunately, it wasn't long before the Crown Prince discovered she was innocent of the assassination attempt, and gradually began to take notice of her. The normally composed man started bickering with the Crown Princess like a petulant child. He even enjoyed eating hot pot with her, insisting she feed him between bites. The Crown Princess disliked him and deliberately gave him only the worst scraps. He wasn't angry at all, and even ate with great relish. Watching this, I felt sorry for Miss Kui. The Crown Prince had already begun to fall for her. His behavior toward the Crown Princess was like a fierce beast rolling over to expose its belly for her to step on. I am the Crown Prince's confidant, someone who can discern his thoughts without words. After the prince developed feelings, I began to protect the Crown Princess with even greater care. I comforted her and solved her problems for her. She returned the kindness by giving me all sorts of fine gifts. She was bored in the deep palace, seeing me as her only true friend, yet her openness displeased the Crown Prince. I knew the Crown Prince was a man of intense possessiveness. If he grew suspicious of someone, that person wouldn't live much longer, so I could only avoid the Crown Princess, lest the Crown Prince's wrath burn me. I struggled to maintain balance. Unexpectedly, I became the only messenger between them after their falling out. When Miss Kui found me, a decade had already passed, her face bruised and swollen. She begged me through tears, Tang Yufeng, I beg you, please plead with His Majesty for an edict on my behalf. I truly can't go on living like this. My heart ached for her unbearably. I approached my master, now the Emperor, to state her plea. The Emperor said he had already begun dealing with the Prince of Chungyang's household and advised her to remain patient. When the time came, her cooperation from within would ensure the prince and his son met a more thorough demise. I relayed the message to Miss Kui. She didn't believe it. Tearfully, she asked, how much longer? 3 months, 5 months, or 3 years? 5 years, she accused. It was he who promised to make me the Crown Princess. Now that he's fallen for someone else, does he no longer care whether I live or die? I can't explain. If the Emperor can't even protect his beloved wife now, how could he protect her? Li Xiyin, it's all her fault. I hate her. If it weren't for her, I wouldn't have fallen to such a state. Miss Kui lost her composure. She no longer confined herself to divorce. She wanted to be empress. She resorted to desperate measures, even drugging me to force my compliance. I hated her for degrading herself, and I hated myself for lacking the power to pull her from the mire. I became her puppet. I obeyed her will and poisoned the queen. The queen had been ill for a long time. Even if I hadn't harmed her, she wouldn't have lived much longer. I convinced myself that I was giving her release, but the queen didn't know. She thanked me for sending her pastries. She even urged me to live well. Little did I know she had already bought me a house outside the palace. This girl who married into the Eastern Palace at 17, whom I'd cared for 10 years, I ended up killing her with my own hands. I wept silently before her steps. I had thought that given the Emperor's vigilance, he would surely detect any irregularities. I await the arrival of death, using my death to exchange for Miss Kui's rebirth. I have no regrets. I will chase after you on the road to the Yellow Springs, to continue caring for the Empress, but I underestimated the Emperor's feelings for the Empress. After the Empress passed, he became utterly despondent. It was as if his backbone had been pulled out. He collapsed completely. On the 7th day after the Empress's death, Kui Yi entrusted me to deliver a box of pastries. It's the Emperor's favorite. She hoped this would make the Emperor recall their past affection. The Emperor hasn't eaten or drunk for days. I'm not sure if he'll take it. Yet the Emperor actually kept it. He held the pastry in a daze, tears streaming down his face. Scene, didn't you love tiger cubs the most? Just take one look. It turned out the pastries reminded him of his memories with the Empress. I couldn't bear to watch any longer. Not long after I left, the Emperor suddenly passed away. Prince Qi announced that the Emperor, overwhelmed with grief, had followed the Empress in death. I don't believe it. How could this be? Though the Emperor was heartbroken. He would never have dashed himself against the coffin to end his life. I resolved to uncover the truth, but was quickly restrained by others. Kui Yi said, "Stop investigating. I've pleaded with Prince Qi, and he'll spare your life." I sensed something amiss. "Why did you plead with Prince Qi? What have you done?" Kui Yi replied calmly, "I put sleeping drugs in Xiao Lin's pastries." Thunderstruck, she drugged them, and I delivered them. Was it actually me who caused my master's death? I went mad. Why would you harm him? Didn't you like him? Weren't you going to be his empress? Kui Yi said coldly, being whose empress isn't the same. She had changed. She was a completely different person from the noble and aloof third Miss Kui I remembered. I gripped her neck viciously. I loved her. Yet I remained loyal to my master. She sneered. "What, are you going to kill me? Go ahead," she pressed on relentlessly. "You'd kill me for Xiao Lin. Have you forgotten who saved you from misery? If Xiao Lin is your master, then what am I?" I had no rebuttal. My original plan was to enter the palace and kill the King of Qi to avenge my master. Her final words completely shattered my defenses. "Tang Yufeng, did you know, the Li Xiyin you killed with your own hands was actually your sister?" I felt as if struck by lightning. She smiled. "Your half-sister from the same mother." I drew my blade and pressed it against her neck. She said without fear, "You personally caused the deaths of Xiao Lin and Li Xiyin." She caressed her belly. "And now you want to kill me too?" Pausing mid-sentence. "Oh, and our child? I don't believe it. I don't believe it." She smiled. 3 months, it can only be you." She leaned closer. "Do it. Avenge your master and your sister." Her beautiful face, more enchanting now than in her youth, the woman I had adored all my life, the one I kept hidden in my heart, she turned out to be such a viper. My heart and lungs are torn apart as I draw my blade and press it against my own neck. "Your Majesty, Empress, Tang Yufeng has come to atone for his crimes." Emperor's extra chapter. I never expected this. The crown prince I've painstakingly raised since childhood would risk his life for a woman. He lay in a pool of blood, his hand still clutching the hem of her garment. When I arrived, the woman knelt outside the hall, her eyes hollow. I asked her, "Are you praying for the crown prince?" She nodded repeatedly, but I could tell she was watching the funeral procession with morbid fascination, practically wishing for the crown prince's early demise. I wanted to kill her on the spot. The crown prince's bleeding had stopped. I had no time to deal with her and went inside to check on him. The crown prince lay on the bed, extremely weak, murmuring someone's name. I leaned in close to listen. "Sai Yin, Li Sai Yin. Who is this? I've never heard of her before." My grand eunuch clearly heard it too, his eyes darting about rapidly. Upon emerging, he immediately introduced, "Your Majesty, this is the daughter of Li Khan, Vice Minister of Works, Li Xiyin." I gave her a glance. Neither possessing breathtaking beauty nor dignified grace, how could my crown prince possibly fancy such an ordinary girl? I truly wished to deal with her, but I know my son, he has always been cold-hearted and indifferent. This woman, for whom he would risk his life and whom he couldn't forget even in unconsciousness, must have been loved to the very marrow of his bones. I shall spare her life. There's no hurry to kill her until we investigate thoroughly. I ordered her to attend to my illness, much to her great disappointment. She dares to be disappointed. I'm being merciful by letting her live. I've ordered the imperial physicians to keep watch, lest she accidentally harms the crown prince. After all, there's not a trace of affection to be seen in that woman's eyes. The Imperial Guard commander reports they've captured 2 assassins. One was captured before even making a move, due to acting in a flustered manner. The other was Tang Yufeng, a trusted aide of the crown prince from the Eastern Palace. After severe torture, the flustered assassin confessed. He was sent by the Prince of Qi, intending to create a false assassination attempt to frame the crown prince. Tang Yufeng had no way out. He neither admitted to assassinating the crown prince nor acknowledged being sent by the prince. We find this most peculiar. His sword was aimed at that Li Xiyin. I ordered an investigation into his relationship with Li Xiyin, and sure enough, It was discovered that they were half-siblings sharing the same mother. But Tang Yufeng had been by the crown prince's side since he was 7, while Li Xiyin was born to a concubine in Li Khan's household. The two had no connection whatsoever, not even having met each other. Why would Tang Yufeng want to kill his own sister? Unable to make sense of it, I commanded another investigation into Tang Yufeng's slave registry. Then, the investigation led to the Kui residence. It was discovered that he had frequent contact with Miss Kui III, namely Kui Yi, who grew up with the crown prince as childhood sweethearts. Could it be that this was a matter of petty jealousy among young girls? I ordered people to keep a close watch on Kui Yi. Unable to set my mind at ease regarding the crown prince, I went to visit him. My beloved son lay weakly on the bed, his arm pillowed beneath that woman's head, yet he gazed at her unblinkingly, as if he could never get enough, unwilling to move, only tenderly stroking her cheek with his fingers. I wanted to storm in and scold them, but the imperial physician held me back. Your Majesty, the crown prince must not be startled. I was furious. I've nurtured him for so many years, teaching him to conceal his emotions, to exercise restraint and caution, never revealing his preferences. He's forgotten it all. Now he's madly in love with a woman. Not only does he indulge her, but he can't bear to see her suffer. I heard that the hemorrhage that day was caused by him forcibly getting up at night to cover her with clothes. I see the crown prince is ruined. Lust clouds judgment. I'll have someone keep a close eye on the crown prince. During his convalescence, the crown prince showed no interest in any other matters, only instructing people to keep him informed about Li Xiyin's movements. Upon hearing that Li Xiyin was meeting a man arranged by her family, he disregarded his illness and insisted on following her despite his weakened state. We truly cannot comprehend this behavior. It seems the crown prince has become a completely different person. I wanted to test the crown prince, so I ordered my subordinates to tell Tang Yufeng the truth that Li Xiyin was his sister. Tang Yufeng was utterly shocked. His subordinate reported, Tang Yufeng knew nothing about this matter, yet still refuses to reveal who sent him to assassinate Li Xiyin. I fabricated an excuse for him, then summoned Li Xiyin for a confrontation before the throne. This girl has quite the nerve, daring to negotiate terms with me. After hearing her words, I fell deep into thought. Is there truly a way to bring the dead back to life? Why was her dream so vivid? I, the emperor, quietly await the arrival of the heaven worship ceremony. As expected, my beloved consort Li presented a bowl of soup poisoned, exactly as Li Xiyin had said. The beloved consort Li whom I've doted on for half my life actually sought to harm me. My heart aches unbearably. That very night, my head throbbed with excruciating pain. When I awoke, I found myself bearing unfamiliar memories. In the dream, Lady Li took a sword for the crown prince, and the assassin fled. I suspect the crown prince, and Li Khan's actions have further vexed me beyond endurance. I have betrothed Lady Li to the crown prince as his consort. I shall see whether the crown prince truly harbors treasonous intentions. I know that if the crown prince dislikes her, Lady Li will not live long. When the time comes, I can simply replace her with a noble consort from a prestigious family. I only need to test it for a year, just ensure Lady Li survives that long. But as I observed her, I began to see that Lady Li was kind and obedient, much like the crown prince's late mother, consort Hui. I find myself reluctant to see her fade away too soon. Yet after all, the child comes from humble origins with limited family guidance, hardly fit to bear the weight of a nation's queenship. Taking the empress's advice, I arranged for several noble-born women to serve the crown prince as concubines. Only when those women were killed did I realize the crown prince remained unchanged, still the same as ever. Li Xiyin's survival depended entirely on his protection. I've only just realized that the crown prince has grown distant from me. The crown prince suspects I'm planting spies around him. He treats me with increasing deference, but no longer with the warmth of before. He's desperately suppressing Prince Qi, and even the empress has become increasingly arrogant. I find myself growing increasingly displeased and distant from him. This eldest son whom I raised with my own hands, I even considered deposing him. Yet whenever the crown princess comes to the palace to pay respects, I'm reminded of consort Hui. I promised consort Hui I would take good care of her only child. I am the sovereign father, unable to speak my mind, and can only hope this little crown princess will convey my thoughts. The crown princess, naive and obedient, nodded. The crown prince will understand his majesty's intentions. Alas, it's all my fault for mismatching this couple. Now even these two share a bed but dream different dreams, their hearts filled with discord. I died under mysterious circumstances, in those final days. Consort Li attended to me constantly, When I realized something was amiss and sought to see the Crown Prince, I was repeatedly prevented. Fortunately, the Crown Princess came to pay her respects. In her alone I placed my last hope. She was merely sorrowful, begging us to rest and recover from illness. Consort Li watched with covetous eyes nearby. We thought to ourselves, it's over. Fortunately, in the end we actually managed to see the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince remained silent. Kneeling by my bedside, I wanted to say something, only to realize that father and son had long been estranged. Like strangers, I patted the back of his hand and exhorted, cherish your wife and children, love your people as your own, for harmony brings prosperity to all. I feared he would become a heartless tyrant. My only hope was that he would protect the Crown Princess well. With the Crown Princess by his side, there still remained a sliver of tenderness in his heart. As I recalled everything from the dream, tears streamed down my aged face. I realized how gravely mistaken I had been in my past life, yet I couldn't help but wonder why was the Crown Prince in this life so madly devoted to Lady Li. As I watched, I smiled. Turns out I wasn't the only one, they had all been reborn too. Lantern Festival night, I saw Li Shi and Jiang Yihan at the calligraphy and painting shop. Lady Li was shy and demure, and the two found themselves deeply compatible. The Crown Prince was grinding his teeth in frustration. I have decided to give my son a helping hand. At the same time, I shall test whether Lady Li is truly resolute. I gave it a try, and Lady Li spilled everything like pouring out beans. She even mistook me for her father from a past life and poured out her grievances. My heart ached for her too, so she had suffered so much during those 3 years as Empress, and I had left such a mess for the Crown Prince to clean up. I began to investigate carefully. The Empress, Consort Li, Prince Qi, and even my own sworn brother, Prince Chengyang. These people all have their own hidden agendas. They fear my authority, yet show no loyalty to my empire. With the new monarch ascending, each harbors their own ulterior motives. I intend to rid the Crown Prince of these thorns in his flesh and splinters in his eye. During the hunt, I noticed someone acting suspiciously, the youngest daughter of Minister Kui Yi. Li Xiyin once said that my careless matchmaking led Kui Yi to an unfortunate marriage. I've decided not to arrange any marriage for her, leaving the decision to her parents, but she maintained close ties with Prince Qi and was entangled with her nemesis from a past life, Lu Kai. I ordered people to keep an eye on her. Sure enough, she intended to harm Li Xiyin. Without hesitation, I commanded the Imperial Guards to follow the Crown Prince in pursuit. Such a heroic rescue scene, how could it not be left to my son? A fine son and daughter-in-law, their predestined bond not yet exhausted. I noticed a young Imperial Guard muttering in the corner, hesitating whether to tell my cousin. I recognized him as a scion of the Jiang family and asked what he was murmuring about. He dared not speak. I commanded him to speak loudly. He had no choice but to recount what he'd witnessed, leaving the dozen Imperial Guards standing nearby exchanging bewildered glances. The news had already spread. Old man Jiang valued his reputation above all else. My son, this is as far as I can help you. After all I've done, my son has finally come to understand. He no longer regards me as an enemy, and has begun to speak his heart to me. Between ruler and subject, father and son, some things are better left unsaid. I set a trap with him to see if Prince Qi would take the bait. Consort Li plotted against me. She must die. As for Prince Qi, I'm more hesitant. If he truly harbors regicidal intentions, I won't show mercy either. I am the emperor. To challenge imperial authority, even kin may be slain. As for Kui Yi, he's but a contemptible clown. Everything remains within my grasp. I am deeply disappointed. Prince Qi harbored the thought of regicide, yet lacked both the courage and the means to carry it out. He was but a muddled and feeble creature. My heart softened. Let him be confined, sparing his life. The storm has gradually subsided, and I wish to properly recuperate, gaining a few more years to put the court in order. This way, when the Crown Prince takes over, it will be smoother and more to his liking. Who would have thought that upon hearing of my improved health, this boy would suddenly drop his responsibilities as if relieved of a burden, running off to the mountains every day. His beloved wife from a past life has now become obsessed with spiritual cultivation, aspiring to ascend to immortality. That silly girl hasn't severed her worldly ties and possesses not an ounce of spiritual wisdom. A little affection and care was enough to make one infatuated, unable to extricate oneself. She couldn't even let go of family members who barely loved her. How could she let go of a partner who had been by her side for 10 years? But I won't say it. I can no longer interfere in the affairs of the young. Sure enough, in less than 2 years, the Crown Prince was kneeling before me again. This time with Lady Li by his side. I took out the long-prepared imperial edict and said with a smile, "This time, it's not my arranged marriage, it's your own request." The Crown Prince's grand wedding brought joyous celebrations throughout the palace. I watched the young couple who, though not newlyweds, seemed even more radiant than newlyweds. My heart swelled with contentment. At last, I've successfully matched a perfect couple. The end.